Yeah, we're all set. Mhm. What is going on, everybody? Oh, of course, there's an echo. I can hear it right away here on playback. Welcome to the deeper dive. No, you do not adjust your screens. There we go. Now I got it set. I'm Eric Lindquist. You can follow me at Eric Lindquist here on X, but welcome to the Stokastic Deeper Dive here on the Stokastic YouTube channel. But it's always exciting because I love being on the deeper dive, being able to have that full hour during live before lock to sit back, relax, and just update my lineups to some nice music. And of course, the background of the live before lock crew. But I also like these Wednesdays because I get to hang out with my friend, Chris Spags. He is absolutely one of the guys who has basically brought me into this industry, curated me, helped me become the man that I am today. And hopefully Luca can follow in his footsteps. How you doing, my dude?
I appreciate it. I appreciate you putting the idea in the world too of making my son do a YouTube channel because I got to get more out there one after another. Jordan's linking the Splash Play. Jordan's linking the Splash Play NBA channel in the description. So shout out to Jordan for the plug there. If you want to go follow my pre-show here, where I do a similar thing, but look at prop markets and stuff on that channel. Check it out. But I'm excited to be here with you too. The one thing I know, I was doing that stream before this. People are already asking about Puppet Lindquist when they know we're gonna be on a stream together. They expect it. But here's the thing, everybody out there, expect the unexpected. We don't know when that puppet's gonna come out. Will it come out? If you hit that like button, it will. Right? I'll do your work right now for you, just like I've done in the past.
Is my puppet gay?
No, he's cool.
Coming out.
He's not. He could. I don't know. He's a different character than you. It's not you.
I know. Well, that's adorable for him. Love is love, but also, yeah, that's kind of the beauty of being on shows with you is we have so much association for people who've watched these shows for years. I mean, we came up doing this together in 2020, middle of the pandemic. We were in the same city and didn't really hang out until the day you left the city. So that's also pretty ironic. Otherwise, we would have hung out a lot more because it's like, well, is he actually that weird in person? I don't know. We'll find out. But
Eric's gigantic sure too. That's the main thing that everybody needs to know, which I don't think you say enough, is that like I wouldn't say a Shrek of a man, but like, you know, like a Shrek of a man.
Yeah, I'm 6'2", 195. What are you gonna do about that? I don't know. It helps. It helps. Also, I'm shocked by you're 6'1", 6'2". You're my height.
Yeah. I mean, definitely not 195 right now afher fatherhood has reared its ugly head on everything for me.
My wife makes me get on the treadmill, sign, and just screaming German at me. It works. It's effective.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, though, for both of us. I think we both represent shorter with either our personalities or the way our cameras frame, I think, is part of it, too. Because, like, I know I have some, like, extra space on my head. But then you get in person, it's like, oh, good, we're big size. And, like, you know, there's other people out there, they're little size. Like, I want to be surprised by something big, Eric, is I always want.
Hit that big, strong like button. Start off this stream right, baby. Yeah, that's what's up. We got Chris Spags at Chris Spags. Go follow him for all his great stuff. Not just Splash Play in the NFL streets, but as he said before there, in the NBA streets. Doing that an hour before the deeper dive. Then he's jumping on these shows, usually with Josh Engelman. We pushed him back here for the day. I'm going to be doing the playback show as well. So looking forward to that. You'll still have Greg, of course, on the old LBL. But there's some news in this first game. I don't know if you're aware, Spags, but this seems kind of important for tonight. The New Orleans Pelicans, 13.5-point dogs taking on Cleveland. Now, why hasn't this line moved? Well, because I don't know how New Orleans is even like hosting a basketball team today, because let me count the ways that we are going to have to pawn through this. And obviously, we're going to take our time and do the ins and outs. This was such an important part of yesterday's slate. Obviously, it worked out nicely for me, nicely to be able to have things get away from that Sam Merrill piece of chalk. Only played 19 minutes in that spot. You saw a lot more for Craig Porter Jr., as I talked about, Ty Jerome, as I talked about. Now, some could say that that's fluke luck. Some could say that, oh, how could you possibly project such things? For me, it's more of a leap of faith of seeing NBA players and like role NBA players where sometimes they get thrust into a role where they play as many minutes as possible. But today, you don't have Sam Merrill. You don't have any of those guys on the Cleveland side. You still have the main boppers in Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, and Jared Allen. But Darius Garland going to be sitting here as well, which is going to change the complexion of everything here. However, let's jump to the New Orleans side, because now we are about to party. No Brandon Ingram going to be suiting up. Trey Murphy, we expected to be out for injury management. And then 94,874 other Pelicans are sitting today. Our mega chalk exists here in this early game. Let's start on the Pelican side with Jamal Cain pulling 38% ownership, Brandon Boston, 33% ownership, Jeremiah Robinson-Earl, Antonio Reeves, and then I'm assuming Javonte Green ends up starting, but Missy is now questionable. They could legitimately have 8 active bodies going for today with Carlo Matkovich, whatever that is, a Trey Jameson, and we do know Daniel Tice is a person who exists in the world, although probably somebody they're looking to ship off to Boston, well, something like that at some point. Talk to me about a 3,800 Jamal Cain, assuming that he's starting. Like, how do we not play just gobs and gobs of these guys today, Spags?
No, these are the kind of spots I love, and I'm sad that, I mean, obviously happy to be here with Eric, but sad Josh wasn't with me for this too, because Josh, like, hates these dumpster dive games so much with a passion, and, like, hates when it's dudes that don't matter, hates when it's bad players. I love it. I think it's a lot of fun because it's like a good opportunity for these guys to get some run. Even in that blowout yesterday for New Orleans, we saw a little bit of some of these guys, and I think a few of them kind of stood out to me in that blowout time. But like Eric said, it kind of starts from the top down. We have Brandon Boston. Brandon Boston's basically been the lead guard for this team. You know, he and Brandon Ingram will share those lead ball handler duties for the most part. But Boston's actually been more of a point guard than he's been in other stops. His rates on the year, about 19% usage, 21% assist rate, rebounding, and an 8% clip. Even if you keep his rates the same and just bump the usage up to where it was previously on the Clippers, wherever else he's been, I think he's only been a Clipper, right? But 23.6% usage for him would put him, I think, at a pretty good projection overall. So Stokastic has him at 37 fantasy points. I would have him over 41. Somebody's got to score these points. And like Eric mentioned, the total hasn't moved that much. So Brandon Boston looks good, I think, and be priority number one. Cain, I'm with you as well. Got 50% of him in lineups. Cain is more the cheaper option, the $3,800 option. I would say in terms of like the priority upside, the ceiling, I think Brandon Boston has the most. In terms of value making lineups work, Cain is probably one of the stronger plays. Pops up a lot for the top ROI lineup, so I good about that. Where are you with your highest exposed Pelicans, Eric? Because I know there's a lot here. I'm high on Boston. I have 63% of him, 50% of Cain. Who else are you getting on that level?
Yeah, this is, I mean, I was kind of stalling there as we were talking through it to some extent and jumping back and forth, not knowing how I wanted to do it because I was just getting my sim done. And I'm pretty excited about what I'm looking at because I'm pretty high on Brandon Boston today. This is a guy that they don't care about the longevity of. I'm quite convinced he's going to be popular. He's already showing to be over-owned in our tools. And there's a part of me that almost doesn't care because Brandon Boston, like Alfred Payton, being active today, we have to get confirmation on that. You can't play him on DraftKings. Otherwise, obviously he'd be another piece of mega chalk on this slate. But I think even still, there's a chance that they just have Elf come off the bench. I think you see Brandon Boston play 34, 36 minutes under just about all circumstances. And it's not like this is one of those spreads that we've seen north of 15, 16. This is still one where Ty Jerome, Craig Porter Jr., Donovan Mitchell on the other side, like those are 3 pretty porous defenders, I think, on the other side of it. And Brandon Boston is going to be able to just go out and do what Brandon Boston likes to do. I mean, we watched him play with the Clippers for years, and he will go chuck a basketball into the midnight moon. I mean, he will just go crazy in a spot with everybody out here. And all of these guards that they have far more invested in, even Jose Alvarado, DeJounte Murray for sure, Trey Murphy, CJ McCollum, Herb Jones, Brandon Ingram, Jordan Hawkins. That's like 7 guys that are way better than what Brandon Boston is. So why wouldn't you just let him go get eternal run today?
Yeah, I'm on the exact same page with you. I do think there's one guy behind him who I'm intrigued by your thoughts on as well, because he's getting 23% ownership right now from Stokastic. But Antonio Reeves, I think, is the beneficiary of this vacancy out there. If Elf isn't active, I think Reeves gets a lot of run. He played in the blowout yesterday, 2nd round pick from Kentucky, had some good shooting days there. Eye test for me in the blowout yesterday, and I don't think he's had any other run besides Summer League. I did watch a lot of the Summer League highlights of him because that's where my brain was at this morning when I saw these guys were all out. But like he looks like an active player as well and looks pretty good. And I think at that 3K minimum salary with shooting guard small forward eligibility, I think Reeves is also interesting. If somehow like Boston didn't get there, I think it would be because, I mean, anybody could soak up the usage at this point. But like Reeves is somebody, I would say Jamal McCain on the spectrum of Jamal McCain maybe, and being useful enough to be good in this kind of spot.
You said on the spectrum. I'm just going to let that one lay there and not do anything with it. I'm definitely looking at Antonio Reeves as a body and a dude and a human being. I don't know how we can take anything from it. I mean, I did see him play quite a bit. Dillingham was always the guy who stood out to me at Kentucky, just kind of buried there in Minnesota. We're not going to see him for probably a year. He'll just continue to develop. But Antonio Reeves was the 47th pick. I haven't seen him play a lot of ball. He never really stood out to me at Kentucky all that much. Obviously, they got ousted in that first round in surprising fashion. And in the summer league, I didn't really watch him play. So you probably have a lot more familiarity with him than I do. I just see this as a very, very shorthanded team. I think we get Alpha out there. How long he can play, I don't know. But they let Noel go as well. 3K is 3K, man. And 7 minutes. You look at some of his efficiency stuff, 31% from three, 37.5% from the field. Nothing stands out. Nothing's impressive. But when you're this shorthanded in your 3K, you're very, very viable on a slate.
Yeah, I think that's really the main thing for me. And I think he's flashed a little bit overall. Yesterday was kind of a turnover machine in the blowout time, but like that's just usage. So I think to me, that's a good sign that he's actually going to be aggressive and have the ability to get turnover, to have a turnover and not get yanked even in blowout time. And the fact that he would play blowout time too for Reeves, I think it'd be a positive here. But yeah, I think the one guy I kind of am curious about your thoughts as well. Not a good minutes projection from Stokastic. Yeah. Is there something?
I was going to say, I want to pitch a nickname for who I think you're going to ask. Being okay. Carlo Matkovic. I think that's a great nickname.
Yeah, his name is Malkovich. I actually was going to ask because you called him Malkovich before, and I'm surprised. I assume you're a guy that enjoys Being John Malkovich, one of the better like artsy movies and very hacky and all that. Now I was going to ask you about Tice because like Tice is a pro. He's not getting projected for minutes. He's been in the rotation before. He's kind of out of it now. Does he really get 0 minutes? Because like it feels like that's one thing here that could throw the entire picture off because he can accumulate like enough stats in every category that would greatly upset these guys' projections, I think.
If Missy doesn't play, everything's on the table. Like Missy not playing today or Messi, Evis Messi. I mean, this would just be a stone cold disaster. I mean, I'm assuming you would still get Tice off the bench, but if he starts, you just jam him at 3,300. Matkovic is going to fall into lineups easier at power forward center. We do have some kind of opportunity cost like we do on most slates at center. I think that's still going to exist to some extent. Maybe not as much as what it has been in the past, but I mean, Giannis is going to be such a priority today with all the value. Alperen Şengün has been out of control, and he's flat 8K taking on Indy. Okay, nice job pricing. Karl-Anthony Towns is out of his god darn mind since the trade. And Jalen Williams exists, who is 8,500, but for whatever reason, center only on DK. So I think it just comes down to like playing whoever is going to start on the Pelican side. And it's not that they can go out and it's going to have to be a minutes thing because Cleveland, you still have that full front court that we're about to get to. Mobley is playing, Allen is playing. It is a terrible spot for whoever goes out there, and you're still going to need fantasy points.
Yeah, it's reasonable. I mean, look, I think if anything, some of the guards are going to be, and really 3-point shooters like Robinson Earl can put up some threes as well. Like just getting away from the middle of the paint is probably something that's going to be positive for these guys, just being able to chuck. And also too, like I think this team at this point is going to know embracing volatility and jacking up some more threes is probably a positive for them. So I think that's maybe not as much of a concern for me, but yeah, rebound wise, on the other side of the equation, like I think Cleveland feels underprojected, and I don't know how you fix that because they should also clean up entirely on that side.
Yeah, they should. Anything else you want to touch on the New Orleans side before we jump over to Cleveland? As I said before, this is such an important spot. We're going to take our time with it.
Yeah, no, Elfrid Payton would be an 8X value if you were playing, if you were on the slate. But yeah, unfortunately, besides that, I think everybody's playable. The one guy who's like not coming up at all, Javonte Green. So maybe that's your tournament leverage, but he doesn't really do anything on the court. So I don't know how you expect him to do anything today necessarily.
Yeah, it's more of a price thing for him. He's 5K for no reason, power forward only. Like, that's just brutality. I think that's really it comes down to. I wish it weren't the case. But holy mother of God, let's take Darius Garland off the floor, and let's see what we get in the old blender, shall we? Donovan Mitchell, over the course of the last plus 3.4% usage. Have you looked at his usage without Darius Garland on the floor so far this season?
I looked at the sample size without LeVert and Garland going back to last year because I wanted to see what it looked like for a longer period of time. And he doesn't gain a lot with the longer term sample size. He goes from 31.8 usage, which he has this year, to 32% usage and higher assist rate. He goes to 31% assist rate. So I'm actually curious because like I've been trying to avoid the really small sample stuff because I know like 5 to 50 possessions or less is where you get diminishing returns, I believe, on that. But if there is something interesting short term, I'm curious to hear it because like I have Mitchell projected so low, and I feel like could be a colossal oversight to have him projected lowly.
And that's what I'm getting at here is that I think this is like, I think it's the most difficult projection on the entire slate. And I've gone back and forth because his props are sitting really low considering how porous this New Orleans team is on the other side. Yes, they're coming off a back-to-back against Boston. Yes, you're obviously going to project it for more minutes in a cup game in those kind of situations than taking on the lowly Pelicans back at home where you don't need to utilize him at full strength. But like, it's still a dude who has a massive, massive ceiling on the slate. However, his usage has dropped with Darius Garland off the floor this season. And I think part of that is just the two mega pieces of chalk that we have on today's slate. Craig Porter Jr., yesterday's hero, he is goated. But at a flat 3K, it's different than getting to 4,200 here now. If he's not going to start, it's going to make people uncomfortable. And then Ty frickin' Jerome, who's been out of control, shooting unsustainably well so far this season. Talked about it at length yesterday, but 73.1% true shooting, 50% from three, only a 17.7% usage rate with Darius Garland off the floor. But these are our two mega pieces of chalk today. And I'm just curious, higher, lower, or just right on these 80 and 62% relative ownerships for Porter Jr. and Jerome?
So I am getting 72% Ty Jerome, the sim that I just ran with the updated data, getting 61% Craig Porter Jr. I have no issue with both his plays. I guess Porter Jr. I would technically be under on right now, Ty Jerome over. Ty Jerome's been producing pretty well. I think the main thing with these guys and how they play is typically when one of Garland or Mitchell comes off the court, you get Ty Jerome coming in, playing like hanging out in the corner version of, the backup guard, where then like Mitchell or Garland will take over, start to dominate the ball a little bit more. In this case, there's going to be minutes for Jerome and Porter, I assume, together with then Mitchell out. So Jerome should get kind of the full run of the castle here. He's been producing about 1.13 fantasy points per minute, which I think Eric very smartly points out. The true shooting at 72.5% going to regress pretty aggressively at some point during the year. But he's an assist guy. He will grab some rebounds, can get some steals as well. I think against this New Orleans team, he's absolutely going to follow some steals. So Ty Jerome, I like a lot of chalk. Porter, I have questions, I think. He's a good shooter, cool hair. That's all good stuff as well. But I think with the ownership being that high, I wonder if there are ways to move away from him. I wonder if maybe if I can hit on Reeves on the other side at 3K, maybe that somehow balances it out. Porter looks good, shooting well as well. I would say also maybe due for some regression in shooting on a limited sample size he has. But I think they look good. Like, I think they look like strong chalk, and I'll be at least with the field and above it in Ty Jerome's case.
Yeah, I mean, 8 threes, he's made 5 of them. 62.5% from 3 looks pretty good. But I think one of the biggest questions I've had, just people who DM me every day about DFS betting, things of that nature, was about Craig Porter Jr. And yesterday, he was a flat 3K against Boston. I didn't think Sam Merrill would get full run. That's exactly what happened. And we got 25 minutes for Craig Porter Jr., who played extremely well in his minutes. He had the highest plus minus going into that fourth quarter. Didn't see what he finished at relative to it against Boston, but they definitely just kept him out there, rode the hot hand. It was nice. He was 2% yesterday. You had Sam Merrill 25% and north of that in some contests. I'm probably going to come in underweight on Craig Porter Jr. if he doesn't start. If he starts, it's really hard not to just pull the trigger on both these guys. However, what is the opportunity cost of that position? Well, there's Brandon Boston. He does have that shooting guard eligibility that works out kind of nicely for you. You have Kevin Porter Jr., who, just depending on Ty Lue's mood, could show up with 28 minutes at some point in time and just absolutely eviscerate a slate at his fantasy point per minute rate. I mean, there's a lot of uncomfortable things about playing two guys at one position only, where it's point guard eligible. And then, you play one at point guard, one at guard, and then you're looking at a utility spot if you're playing a third point guard or going to another center. I think it's just one of those game theory aspects where if he doesn't start, I think I'll have to trim some. I think we'll take his projection down a little bit, but I think he ends up being the starter. Don't you?
I would think they go with Jerome, but they like Jerome to close, so they could go with Porter first.
I think they both start for what it's worth. I think George Niang has a chance to potentially start, but like I currently have the starting 5: Craig Porter Jr., Donovan Mitchell, Ty Jerome, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen.
Because you were playing Porter, like you said, I mean, this is the whole reason you got the nuke of the night, right? Yesterday was with Porter was basically playing Merrill's role as kind of the wing.
Correct.
So
Yep.
Yeah, so I guess if they have the two guards on the court, then Porter plays the wing, which they could do as starters, I guess, and then you rotate Mitchell out, bring somebody else on the wing. One guy I'm curious to see how they deploy would be Luke Travers today. Stokastic has him for 18 minutes. He's been doing a lot. It's a really small sample for him, but 1.4 fantasy points per minute. In the G League, Luke Travers as well had, I think, he had a near triple-double game in his debut. He's been a little bit of a monster, like really aggressive per minute overall in terms of what he's doing out there, blocks and rebounds, and actually assisting as well. 3K minimum for him too, but I think this could go one of two ways, where you see the three guards getting a lot of minutes, or you see guys like Travers rotating in. They have Jalen Tyson as well, who could theoretically pick up some minutes. He's in 18 right now. But I think that's my concern for Porter, is like you could maybe just not play him all those minutes and could play some other guys.
Did the Spidey bomb say yesterday, bro, Ty Lue's not the Coast Couch? I was talking about Kevin Porter Jr. You got to keep up. You got to listen. Point guard is what we're talking about. We were talking about the position. And I think Kevin Porter Jr. would have been massive chalk if you had Darius Garland playing today. I think you would see lots of ownership still in Greg Porter Jr., Ty Jerome, with all these other pieces like Merrill, Isaac Okoro, Dean Wade. With all of them out as well, it would still matter. But I think Kevin Porter Jr. probably still interesting for tournaments, super high upside. And you want to get away from one of the two in one lineup or one of the two in a three max. I think it is very viable to just hope one of them absorbs most of those minutes. But let's recap for the people, because again, I knew this game was going to take 15, 20, 25 minutes, and that is just fine by me. We should be able to just hum through the rest of this slate. But favorite Pelicans plays?
Favorite Pelicans plays would be highest exposed would be Brandon Boston for me. And then I'll be with the field or slightly above on Robinson, Earl, Kane, and I'll be about double the field on Antonio Reeves in the hopes that he hits.
All right. Favorite of the main three Cleveland guys: Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen.
Main guy for me out of the big guys for Cleveland would be Mobley. Allen seems to get the biggest rate increase, but I just didn't get there. Mobley, I've got 5% of, not even close to the other two.
Yep. I think Mobley's an interesting tournament target. We have an optimal percentage a little bit higher. Again, he's 3% right now. I think that'll be a little bit higher just because of no Darius Garland. There should be extra usage for him, even though Donovan Mitchell's lost a little bit, and you're seeing some usage and assist rate there for Ty Jerome. Assuming he starts next to him, that'll make it look interesting. But we got the live before lock crew that'll cover that. Finishing it out, Craig Porter Jr., Ty Jerome, good chalk, bad chalk.
I think mostly good chalk. I think they're worth the exposure today. I think they make lineups work really well. Giannis looks pretty good matchup wise, projection wise. Like there's a lot, and even if you don't go Giannis, a lot of good pay up options between 8K to 10K. That's the Sim seems like a lot. So I think for this lineup, this slate, these guys being in your lineup more often than not is probably the wise move.
Low ballers. Can't wait for the Mitchell illness late breaking news. I would not be shocked by anything that showed up on the Cleveland side, where we're just like talking about Travers starting for no reason, George Niang potentially starting, and maybe randomly just having Donovan Mitchell sit this one out and letting Ty Jerome and Craig Porter Jr. go nuts. Like, wouldn't shock me.
And then it'd be even better plays, and I think they already look more than good enough as they are.
That is for sure. Whew, we got through it, Spags. Now we should be coasting a little bit more. We got Chicago, 9.5-point dogs that they are heading into Milwaukee, nearly a 240 total in this one. We got Health coming by way of Milwaukee. They're still without Chris Middleton. Patrick Williams going to be out on the Chicago side, which leads us into, I would say, some interesting tournament plays. Nothing that I'm finding to be like a crazy priority. I think Vooch is all right at 8,100. Zach LaVine, 7,100, seeming like there are going to be lots of lineups where he can show up as a non-Cleveland/New Orleans piece. But Josh Giddey's minutes have been so erratic based on whatever they're looking for. Against Detroit, not a very difficult defensive matchup whatsoever, but if Dame gets it going early, I could see Ayo Dosunmu absorbing more of those minutes like we've seen in some recent games. And that just has me worried because I keep updating my stuff and I get more Josh Giddey than what I'm comfortable of, which is so weird because guard is already so loaded, specifically point guard, which we just covered the two biggest pieces of chalk. What do you like from the Bulls side?
Yeah, I'm also getting a little more Giddey than I would think too, given that I don't have a great projection on him, but getting him about 7% of the sim lineups I have. So slightly less in the field, but not that much less. I think for Giddey, and there's a lot of players I noticed with kind of the Bills. I think Jalen Green's another one in the ownership and what I was seeing sim-wise, where you get these guys a little bit more in balanced builds, where if you're not taking the Giannis, you're not taking the high-price guy, maybe you're fading the value a little bit more. They get these guys coming in more. So I get it as a pivot around. But I agree, Giddey's I would have for 1.1 fantasy points per minute tonight. The rates have been good, but the minutes, he's so much less than his other teammates like Kobe White, like Zach LaVine, like Vucevic. So that's a little bit of a concern point, but 7% of them, what are you going to do? Zach LaVine's the play for me here, though. I got 13% exposure. The field looks like they'll be a little bit higher, but I think he looks good. His rates weirdly take a jump up with Patrick Williams off in a way that I don't know why that would be correlated. His assist rate seems to go up a little bit more. Again, small sample size stuff. I didn't actually account for that in a way where like I'm going on my way to play him more, but it would affect his projection enough to make him slightly more playable. So LaVine, I think, looks good right now. And if you were to account for small sample size stuff with Williams out this year, it might matter a little bit more than it seems.
I'm very curious who that fifth starter is going to be for them tonight. I'm assuming that we get Phillips. I'm seeing some places that have Craig. I'm trying to see which one we have projected for which here at the moment, but um, I don't know. It's not like we need more value. 3,200, 3K for these guys. I don't know what the minute ceiling is. Maybe they just dust off Torrey Craig and keep everybody else's rotations the exact same. I could see that being a deal. Buzelis has been terrible so far, which is sad because I did see him play in Summer League. He looked awesome over there and then is just kind of fallen by the wayside. When you have guys like Levine, Kobe White, and Josh Giddey handling the ball, it's just really hard to get going, get in a rhythm. And so I understand it to some extent, but I'm not sure anything really opens up who that fifth starter is. Do you?
No, I don't think so. I mean, Stokastic looks like has Julian Phillips getting 25 minutes right now, and he's a 5x value for me, but like doesn't project terribly well per minute. He's only averaging about 0.68 fantasy points a minute right now. I have him at 0.66 today. So don't think that's really a move. Mazalis I could see taking a shot at because he's minimum salary and small forward, power forward, and he's been about 0.85 fantasy points a minute this year. And as Eric mentioned, I think has been playing a little bit under expectation. So true shooting as well at 45% for the year. It's probably going to positively improve at some point. So not the most exciting plays, but Bazelis, I was getting more of earlier before all the value opened up. So I think he's not a terrible play if you kind of throw that value aside for some lineups.
All right. Patrick Williams lines a ball off the floor at 0.92 for Bazelis. I guess that's just somebody to kind of keep in mind. We could see a number of different iterations, but I would assume who still comes off the bench and they just kind of keep those same guard rotations. That fifth starter, whoever it is, Torrey Craig, or 25 minutes, I guess we would be looking at for Mr. Dalen. Yeah, there's a number of different ways that one could pan out, but let's jump over to the other side here with Milwaukee, where when you have value, you go to the top of the board. And we played this game last week, and it was failure with Giannis Antetokounmpo, had like nearly 100% of him on whatever slate that was, where it just ended up bricking. It was against Toronto. He put up 44.5 fantasy points. He goes on the back-to-back, puts up 97.5. If you flip-flop those two, I'm probably not on this show, and I'm probably in Tahiti somewhere. But unfortunately, here we are. Giannis Antetokounmpo, my highest owned pay-up, my highest owned player, not named Ty Jerome here at the moment. I don't see how I get away from him today.
Yeah, I'm on the same page with you. I got him over 60% in the sim. So, yeah, with the field, I guess, not going crazy on it. I think there's some merit for lineups today where it's just so easy to get Giannis that you can pivot off them for tournaments, try to get a little more unique. Again, play a lot of guys in the 8 to 10K range. I did see in a sim I ran with Stokastic before, where, just playing around things a little bit. You'll find sometimes out there where you get less Giannis because it's trying to feed you more of those guys, like your Franz Wagner's, people like that. Steph Curry be another good pivot as well. There's ways you can go that are not Giannis. So I would say that is kind of an important point, but it's too easy to get him in. It's pace up spot. Bulls playing at one of the fastest paces in the league. Not a lot of defense there. What's he going to be afraid of Vucevic in the middle? Even Williams not being an inhibitor now is probably helping him out too. So Giannis in the spot, I think, is worthwhile chalk, even though I'm just with the field on it and a little bit above, but it's not a stand for against him really.
36.5% usage, 61.6% true shooting, 33.8% assist rate, 18.8% total rebound rate. I mean, he's breaking everything. 1.65 fantasy points per minute, gets to take on the fastest paced team over any sample size you want to use this season. Just a ridiculous spot here for Giannis. But that also means that we could potentially get some really low owned pieces to take shots on. I am kind of interested to see, like a couple percent Damian Lillard going up against this front court. 14% ownership we've got him over owned here at the moment, but I could see myself landing on a couple shares. Brook Lopez has obviously stepped into more of an offensive role at times, usually with Damian Lillard off the floor. But is there anything else you want to mine out for Milwaukee?
No, I got 8% of Lillard. That feels right as, sort of that pivot point. Again, doing this, two of the things I basically kind of mentioned as a pivot point away from Giannis, where you're taking a guy in that price range between 8 to 10K and then hoping Lillard then gets direct leverage, has an outlier day that somehow knocks Giannis down. But people in the chat saying like, oh, the game might be a blower. I hope it's a blowout or whatever. I don't think this one blows out. Like Chicago's competitive enough on their side, frankly, more competitive than I believe most people in the industry thought they would be. So I don't think this one blows out, especially with how Milwaukee's been playing. And to me, I think maybe the unique thing could be pairing Lillard with Giannis. Like maybe they just play a really competitive game or play Giannis with a Bulls bring back of note that's not Zach LaVine. There are ways to do this, I think, if you want to play Giannis and get unique, but Giannis is really hard to avoid as the main play here and one of the main plays on the slate.
and hit that like button as we jump across to, I mean, what, 6 more games to go? We got the schedule here for you coming up. We've got EMac leading the way with Greg Ehrenberg. Looking forward to that here. Jordan Klein's still behind the virtual glass here. The best producer in the game named Jordan Klein, no doubt about it. And then myself and Greg Ehrenberg will be on playback there at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 4:30 Pacific, giving you all the goods. If there's any late swapping that needs to be done, if there's any tilting that needs to be done, and God knows I like to tilt, we will be in there doing that on playback. We'll throw that link in for the people. You know what? I might as well do this too, Jordan, because I just want to get it done. I want people to have time to sign up and utilize some of the tools right now. Well, we've got 11 sites that'll be on your screen. We got Pick'em on the left. We got Sportsbooks on the right. The link join that is down there at the bottom of the video description box below. Has amazing deals. Bet365, it's available in 11 states. You bet 5, you get 150. DraftKings Pick 6, Pick'em in all of the Pick'em states. You bet 5, you get $50 in bonus bets over there. Tons of ways to be able to get great deals in addition to 1 free month of the DFS Sims tools here at Stokastic for any sport that your heart desires. I'm probably preferring you guys go to the NBA streets so you hang out with us every single Monday through Friday and utilize those for a month. But if you want to check them out in the NFL streets, guess what? We got an amazing, amazing Thanksgiving slate coming our way. Although Tommy DeVito versus Cooper Rush isn't exactly, at the top of everybody's list here at the moment, but I'm going to be playing it. You're going to be playing it. And if you guys want to have the best tools in the industry to be able to play it, check out one of those 11 sites. You have to follow 4 simple steps there. You simply take screenshots of your welcome email and your first settled bet. You send them to support@stokastic.com. and you will get yourself 1 month of the Sims tools. Now, it's only if you're 21 and over. If you have a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Alrighty, Spags, we are going to get trucking Indies taking on Houston, 6.5-point dogs they are. And Tyrese Halliburton's been a huge disappointment this entire season. It's just kind of what it is. We've had some value that's shown up here and there, but some of these minutes are going to start getting thinned out. Moses Brown gets added to this Indy roster today. Thought that was interesting. And now it's just too consolidated for my liking. Whether it's Miles Turner, Benedict Mathurin, Pascal Siakam, if they land in a lineup or two, so be it. But how do you prioritize anything here against a tough defensive, slow-paced Houston team?
Yeah, I think the price tags from Mathurin's still pretty good. The main thing for me with the Pacers overall, and I know Josh and I talked about this a lot on the shows we've been doing, like they all are just chopping up the usage a lot, where there's nobody really getting above 25% usage. Everybody here safely now under 24% usage on the year. The one who's like kind of underpriced for it is Mathurin. Like to me, Halliburton's been mispriced. It's the moment they traded for Siakam, where his rates kind of fell off the cliff last year. Nobody really caught up with it. He had some spike games in the playoffs, kind of papered over everything. They shouldn't have that great run they had. But now it's like he's still mispriced. Like he's not the same player this year. Missing a lot of shots as well, 51% true shooting. If you watch him shooting games, he's bricking really noticeably and like it's almost uncomfortable to watch. I don't want to be there. Like I'm not going to get there projection wise. Turner and Mathurin, a little bit of. And Mathurin, I like a lot. He's the best rebounder on their team right now. Technically, actually getting a 12.5% rebound rate compared to Turner's 12% rebound rate. So big score, is there in clutch time. Doesn't suck like Halliburton kind of seems to now. I think it's Mathurin and Turner and nothing else even remotely appeals.
I thought with Jarris Walker out of the picture too, I thought something would show up here. It's really not for me. It's kind of a bummer, but is what it is. Miles Turner, we're going to be dealing with that questionable tag here. If he ends up out, I really don't want to deal with it, but Jarris Walker, I guess, is still questionable here at the moment, but I think he is closer to being on the doubtful side of things here. Ben Shepherd, questionable as well. Maybe there ends up being something, but man, with Moses Brown added, it just really, really sucks because there's probably nothing that I will really like from the Indy side in the front court, no matter what. He has a flat 3K. Maybe he gets a surprise start, but we just saw in the Enrique Freeman play all of 19 minutes. That didn't go well for people who tried to take that shot. I think he was like 4 or 5% on. I didn't take that shot, but that front court is a disaster. It's not a front court disaster in Houston with Alperen Sengun. I got to tell you that much. He looks real nice on today's slate. One of my highest owned pieces. Is he one of your highest owned pieces?
He is, in fact, one of my higher owned pieces. I got 55% of him today. I like him a lot. Very easy to get to lineups with him and Towns and Giannis, which is one of the things that I do like to build around. Sengun, I've had highly projected for a while. Now it seems like the Stokastic actually has him a little bit higher than I do today by a 0.1 fantasy points. So I'm glad to be on the same page instead of kind of alone on Sengun Island. But a good spot against Indiana. Miles Turner, good center, but doesn't really inhibit, I think, what a guy like Sengun can do. And really everything else on the Houston side, not terribly impressive, even though we'll get some ownership today. Sengun to me is like your mini Jokic on this kind of slate.
I love, yeah, Josh Gillum, always hanging out in the chat. Good to see. Shout out Villanova's finest. But Şengün to the moon if Turner out. I always love when people bring that stuff up because I think that's one of the things that doesn't always get updated by multiple people's projections. It does at Stokastic because we're always thinking about those angles. And there's been a couple of amazing rebounding spots, whether it's an undersized Charlotte or an undersized OKC team here of late, where you could maybe see certain guys just see surges in their rebound rates. Yeah, if Miles Turner ends up out, this is just Alperen Şengün to the moon because whoever it is out there is going to get trucked.
Yeah. And I think Şengün, for what it's worth, if Turner's in, I don't care. I'll still play Şengün a lot. Like, I think he's really well priced for the ceiling he has. Right now, having a projection at just shy of 50 fantasy points, and he can push 60 in any given day, too. So I think it really works well for him on the slate.
Now, it is an upper-paced Pacers team. I don't know why I just did the double pace thing there. But anyway, we've got ourselves an interesting spot with Jalen Green, I think, on today's slate. Shooting guard only, 6,300, but there's only 3 guard spots he could show up in. Once again, shooting guard, the guard spot, or utility. And as such, he's at 23% ownership. He's probably the one piece on this slate that I'm the most nervous not to have right now, but I don't have him in my top 50 lineups. And it freaks me out because, again, anybody on any given night can go nuts against this backcourt on the indie side, but there's an opportunity cost that's just not getting me anything here. I am far more likely to land on Fred VanVleet. We're starting to see him take on a little bit more of the offensive workload. That's something that you're paying him to do. You brought him in to do. It didn't really come to fruition last season, but starting to get some rapport with Alperen Şengün, looking pretty darn good so far over the course of the last few weeks here. I kind of like just getting to VanVleet and hitting eject on Jalen Green, who might end up way over-owned over this if things come out on the Cleveland side where it's just point guard, and Jalen Green fits into lineups easier. How do you feel about this backcourt on the Houston side?
I'm with you conceptually. I think the main thing for me is I have these guys pretty close to flat in projection. I have VanVleet at 34.9 and Jalen Green at 33.1. So I'm lower than Stokastic on both guys, which might be why I'm generally high on Şengün, I suppose. But for VanVleet, I agree with you. The issue for this team is like they'll split sometimes as a lead ball handler who's running the offense initially, and that kind of makes for random VanVleet spike days. Then Jalen Green will have one as well. So they just taking the cheaper guy works. That said, I'm still lower than the field on Jalen Green. I've got 14% of him compared to the field's 23% expected by Stokastic. Similar for VanVleet. I've got 3% compared to the field's 11. I just kind of don't want either guy. Jalen Green I'll get because of the price tag and it works. But I'm with you too. Like the fact that he is only shooting guard, a little bit easier to cram him in and get at some uses. Like if you're shooting guard small forward, maybe you get a little more ownership, but I don't see the need for him on the slate, even though he looks perfectly okay. And projection, like cash game, I think he might be a better play.
Yeah, I'm with you. Cash game, if he shows up, and again, it depends what else we get starting in New Orleans, Cleveland, how the pieces fit together. I can't tell you that right now. That's what Live Before Lock is going to be able to do as those starting lineups roll out. Nice that it will be something that will get covered because Pelicans, Cleveland, that locks right off the bat on this slate. And, well, the late night hammer is more of like a butt plug. I mean, it is an ugly, ugly back end of this slate.
Did somebody say butt plug? Oh, I didn't know you were going to say the secret word. Butt plug, everybody. Go to the link share and click that link now because Eric said the secret word. Nah?
Are you taking a hit while you're doing it? What's going on?
Yes, the secret word, Eric.
Oh my god. So I'm taking taking a vape pen, making it a butt plug. Oh man. I don't know. That was the first thing that came to my mind. Sometimes I don't know if you know this, Chris, but sometimes I say things that I shouldn't on these shows.
So, look, you just got to go off the top of your head. You got to let it flow. I get it. But, look, that's a little Pee Wee Herman bit here. Everybody won. That was great.
Yeah, we should have Kayla back on this show. She'd really, really enjoy herself here as we cover Portland.
She's thriving in this November month, especially.
Hey, as long as she's happy, we're happy. Portland plus 11.5, taking on Oklahoma City here. Highest owned players from this game. What? Did I skip Philly Memphis? I did skip Philly Memphis. Shit. Thank you. I'm glad you're here. Sorry. I just went one game down and I guess you say butt plug and the entire show gets derailed. It's amazing how that happens. Let's go over to Philly and Memphis taking each other on. 225 and a half total. I'm just going to ask you this because, again, we have 19 minutes, but I repeat, the end of this slate should be easy to be able to fly through. What do you think about Joel Embiid getting a nice stern talking to from Tyrese Maxey?
I will say what it made me do. So, like, one thing that I do for my projections just to give me a little bit of differentiation, and I'll eyeball it too. I use the current year's rates. Like, once we get to a certain point in the year, I'm like, I'll take the shot just that these guys are showing who they are. For Embiid, when all that stuff came out and I looked at Stokastic projection, I was like, I'm going to give him last year's rates, just see what happens. That's sort of where I am with it. Is like, he got the stern talking to. He also got to vocalize some discontent about the offense not flowing through him. I think if you wanted to make a stand on him today, 3.6% ownership when he's got a lot of narrative behind him, I think is a reasonable thing to do. The price tag's okay. One way to get away from Giannis would be Embiid going nuts. The issue is, like, if Maxey's back in and then you have Paul George now and you have Jared McCain, who's I think deserving of some usage, even if it's not going to be the 28% he's been on the year. I just don't know that Embiid's the same situation as last year. So I got nobody in this game above 5% besides, I guess, Jake LaRavia, which is not a stand by any chance. So I could avoid everything here, but I do think there's some reason we made for Embiid. And I'm a little afraid of like fading him after this is the most narrative he's ever had in like a while besides the MVP here.
Yeah, that's very much it. I mean, you could see him decide that he's going to go out and just, remind people, but he's also just looked clumsy out there to start off this season. I don't know another word to use to really describe it. And now Jared McCain playing some serious ball. That probably affects me from taking any Tyrese Maxey shot where, at 1, 2%. Same thing on the last slate where it's like, hey, Joel Embiid at 1%. I'm willing to get some and see what happens, roll the old dice. Didn't go well. I can tell you that much. But, if you're being late to meetings and not figuring your shit out on the Olympic team, you're probably also not going to do it when you have excuses on the NBA team. But anywho, let's jump over to Memphis. As you said before, Jake LaRavia, I mean, that's kind of it. That is not the magic word, though, on today's slate. Whatever if you land on Jaren Jackson Jr., whatever if you land on a share of Desmond Bane, but even in 20 max, I wouldn't be looking at rostering anybody here besides LaRavia, maybe in 1 or 2.
Yeah, Bane I saw in some top ROI lineups, which I kind of get the logic here. It should be a competitive game. Bane's price tag is reasonable, even though the value projection isn't at like that 5x historical threshold we always look at for guys. So I'm with the concept of Bane. LaRavia, I think, just makes lineups work pretty well at that price tag. But yeah, not a lot to love here. If you got tournament shots on Jaren Jackson and Bane, I think 5% of those guys probably enough to be where you need to be.
Let's jump over to the game that I wanted to jump over to immediately. It is Portland. It's Oklahoma City. 11.5-point dogs are the Portland Trailblazers. They will be playing basketball without, yet again, DeAndre Ayton, and that should send Donovan Clingan back into that starting unit. We're seeing that block rate. I mean, that's kind of a decent little number to be getting from him. Looks all right on the defensive end of the floor. Not very polished offensively. We can work on that, though, my friend. We can work on that. I think it's okay to land on some Robert Williams here at power forward center, 4,400 for him on the Portland side, but woof, just a gross game overall.
I'm getting a lot of Robert Williams here. I got 60% of him in the semi round.
Oh, high.
I'm going to bump it down.
Yeah.
So my projection on him's high. I have him at 31.5 fantasy points. So Cascas at 25.3. As I always say with any piece of content, please defer to the site ran by top DFS players who made millions that has a team of people please. But I do think for me, when it stands out, I do kind of let it ride for the most part to some extent. So Robert Williams, dual position eligibility, 1.4 fantasy points per minute on the year. Do a little bit of everything, clearly being showcased a little bit for trades. I'm with you that Clingan's kind of scary because he's getting hype on social media for being Rudy Gobert adjacent with how he's playing.
No.
Looking a lot of block upside. I get that. But Williams, I think, finds his way to minutes. There's always risk of foul trouble for Clingan as well. You got SGA attacking the rim. You got Jalen Williams or whatever he does. So projection-wise, I wouldn't be getting Clingan anyway. But I think getting Robert Williams and not getting Clingan kind of pairs well together.
I mean, I kind of love that stand because if they go small, Robert Williams falls more into that hybrid 5 type. Not from like a shooting perspective, obviously, but offensively, he'll be a motor in there against a Jalen Williams on the defensive end, at least. But I'm just worried this game goes ultra small because OKC just forces teams to do that. Yesterday didn't go so well against the Spurs because Zach Collins was knocking down shots from the outside at times. I just watched that fourth quarter basically, and just one of the more surprising results of yesterday for sure. But Robert Williams, Big Rob, gotta go to Time Lord a little bit here today, no doubt about it. But 60%, hey, if that ends up being your stand and he ends up getting the 28 to Clingan's 20 minutes at the 5, I mean, you could be looking unbelievable for tournaments.
Yeah, I think that would be the hope here. And again, I don't know that I want to be that high, but if I get 25%, I think that's also a double the field stand. And that's the safer way to play. But we'll see because I could do lineups while a kid's yelling at me. So we'll see how it goes.
Dads. Well, actually, you know what? I encourage Luca to yell at you right now because Puppet Lindquist hurt my feelings. But also,
Puppet Lindquist, he made it fun. We had a good time. We got to celebrate butt plugs. It was all in everybody's wheelhouse here.
Everybody's wheelhouse. Mine is butt plugs. Great. Jalen Williams, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander showing up a little bit of spend ups. They're going to pale in comparison to Giannis, though, and that's my biggest problem with them. Lou Dort, though, shooting guard, small forward, he fits into lineups a little bit better out. However, 5,200, not exactly cheap, and we have some potential value that can show up in some places as this slate goes along. I think I'd probably prefer some Atlanta pieces going up against Golden State, even at a tough spot there if you get Jalen Johnson out again. I'd probably prefer some of the Indy stuff if you get Shepard and Turner out potentially, but it's hard to really theorize how I would handle Lou Dort because he's somebody I would be obviously happy to trim, but currently in 20% of lineups for me. How do you feel about Lou Dort?
I got 4% Dort, but I'm with you. Like, I think those guys, the shooting guard, small forward guys that have a decent projection that maybe get your ownership product down a little bit. Like, I've never really kind of run away from them. So I'm okay with it. My big stand here is on Jalen Williams. I've got 19% of him compared to the field's 11. Everything else, I'm getting half of SGA. On a Giannis slate where he's like the clear chalk, I think SGA probably has a little bit more merit, especially against these guards that are just out there. Like, they're not going to defend much that SGA is going to do. Center, maybe a little bit of a different question with Klingon and Robert Williams, but SGA, I would like to get more of. I don't know. I'm going to force my way to it, but Jalen Williams looks the best to me, and I would have no issue getting Dort, even though I didn't get quite as much.
All righty. Anything else from this one? Move along.
Yeah, we can just keep it moving.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I mean, Orlando Clippers is going to take like 2 seconds, I think. But Knicks, Phoenix, we got ourselves a 4.5 point favorite in the road the New York Knickerbockers here. And the Phoenix Suns here on the other side, Yusuf Nurkic, the eternal questionable tag. We kind of got an interesting starting lineup on the Phoenix side. We'll get to that, of course. But the Knicks, Jalen Brunson, Mikal Bridges, Josh Hart, OG Anunoby, Karl Anthony Towns. If you are ever on any tournament slate trying to figure out how you can potentially get different than the field, these are the guys that you just prioritize because the minutes are always there. They're always going to get the opportunity. It's just what they do with it, even at elevated price tags as this season has gone along. I mean, Josh Hart is 7,300, and there are so many slates that I update everything, and he still jumps to the top of my stuff because of that rebound rate, because of the double-double potential. But the only one pulling any ownership at the moment is Karl Anthony Towns, and rightfully so. Offensively, the guy has been absolutely out of his damn mind. Wish we had saw any version of this offensively in Minnesota. Defensively, you knew what you were getting, Tibbs. You knew what you were getting. But 9,400 Karl Anthony Towns, 15.5% owned. I am way over that.
Yeah, poor Towns getting ringer think pieces about how he's a bad defender, as we didn't know that, and he's hurting the Knicks. Shocker, but that's the deal the devil you make to get the firepower in, your version of Porzingis on this team. And I love Towns, man. Towns, I will keep going to. I do notice one thing with my projection for Stokastic. I'm high on Towns, low on Brunson. Brunson, I think, is the real tournament play here because people like me are excited to play Towns. Towns been great on the year, averaging just under 1.5 fantasy points per minute. I'd have for 1.55 today. I don't think this matchup against Phoenix is one that's going to stop him. Yusuf Nurkic, a big body in there, just gives him, honestly, I think, good fodder for Towns to pop some threes right over his head. So I like Towns a lot here. He's the only player I'm getting meaningfully. With you on the Josh Hart thing, I always kind of get him because he's small forward, power forward, and he just plays so many minutes. But nothing else here looks great. I think Brunson is tournament play because he's been so quiet. Like, that kind of screams like Jamal Murray the other day. I think like at some point it's going to hit for Brunson, but I keep liking Towns, and I'll keep liking Towns for now.
Yeah, it's eternally showing up. I mean, he's at like a 37.5 points plus rebounds prop every single day now. It opened around 27.5, 28.5 to start off this season. We have ridden it to the top. DFS price tag elevated here. Yeah, it's not the most high voltage game, but I mean, this total opened at 219.5. It ended up being my lock of the day here. I like this one. Moved up to 223.5. We're going to get some nice CLV on it here, and potentially Yusuf Nurkic. Always, it just feels like every single slate coming out there with some type of a Q tag, and well, no exception today. But also Iguodala ends up stepping into that starting lineup. We'll get Mason Plumlee. That's just kind of what they've gone to. And with another true big on the other side and Cat, I don't think there's any reason for them to get away from starting Mason Plumlee. But the only guy really pulling any ownership, Devin Booker, 10%, Grayson Allen, 8%. He's a little bit under-owned there at 4,300 shooting guard, but Again, so much news still to come here on the New Orleans-Cleveland game. Hard to know how much Grayson Allen I'll land on. Right now, 14%. How do you look at Phoenix on today's slate?
I think similarly to how it sounds like you do, where I got 5% of Booker, 5% of Grayson Allen. I think that's sort of enough here. Nurkic with his minutes expectation, the price tag where it is, I don't see getting there, even though the Q tag, if he were to play, I mean, he's had 50 fantasy point upside and not a huge run of minutes, so I could get the logic in going there. But just a 23-minute projection on paper doesn't look that good. Phoenix, I think to me, the issue is like Booker, his rates without Beal and Durant don't look fantastic. He's at like 1.2, 1.3 fantasy points per minute, but should be a little bit higher for his price tag is. The ceiling is certainly there theoretically, but this is a tough matchup on paper, even though I know the Mikal Bridges of the world defensively not grading out as well. Like you do have a lot of wings to throw at Booker, make his day a little bit tougher. So I don't love it. The total's not bad. There's really not any reason to not go here if you want to. But I think for me in this game, it's like Towns and everything else. Get it in a sim, great, but I don't really care.
Yeah, that's kind of the way that I look at it too. I mean, just give me the Karl Anthony Towns piece. Give me, I can't imagine a 5K Mason Plumlee is going to show up in my lineups if I change the projection on that. I mean, it's starting to get up into a territory where even though it's Cat on the other side, I really don't have interest at that type of a tag. Like, it's weird. I mean, Wendell Carter being out, 5,400 Goga Patatse, probably somebody that I would rather land on. Maybe I turn some Goga into some Mason Plumlee if need be, but don't really have anything else from this one, that's for sure. I think we can probably move it along.
Yeah, I'm with you.
All right, 2 games to go, everybody. Smash that like button if you could for us. Once again, live before lock coming up in 7 minutes. EMac leading the way, your fearless leader 2024 EMac. Looking forward to having him on with Greg Ehrenberg covering everything for you. And then I'll be on with Greg on the playback show, leading you guys for another hour. If there's any news that pops up, we'll have it covered for you. Also, cover yourself over on the old Hall of Fame by having an awesome, what just happened there? Stokastic avatar. How about that? Went back 4 years because I'm on a show with Spags, jumped in the old time portal, tried to drop the Awesemo bomb, but you know what? Stokastic is where you want to be heading. Go to stokastic.com/HOF, sign up, get yourself one of those cool looking avatars. I think all 5 of those look pretty shimmery and nice. You add those to your profile, and then you finish in the top 3 of a contest of 5,000 or more. You will get yourself a free month of The Sims. So that's a pretty great deal in and of itself. So download that. Again, you got to tweet that win to Stokastic HOF over on X. Take advantage of it, my friends. Really cool stuff. And we got those cool rings, the awesome stuff that Lofty's put together there for the people. When you have a $20,000 plus win, take a look at all of those great features over at the Stokastic Hall of Fame. But we've got Atlanta 7.5-point dogs taking on Golden State here in this one. I am paying attention to the news with Jalen Johnson. However, we did get some type of price bumps on these guys. Clint Capella ended up getting a lion's share of minutes against the Kings last time out. 5,500 for him now instead of 5,100. Okongwu up from 5K to 5,100. Trae Young, the absolute floor from an offensive perspective shooting. 1 for 7 from the field against Sacramento in that spot without Jalen Johnson. That was weird, but also weird. How about 19 assists in your pipe hole? That's pretty wild to look at. I'm not getting a ton from this entire game, but on the Atlanta side, I think if he plays, Jalen Johnson is just going to be a low-owned tournament dart to take some shots on at 8,400. It's just hard to turn him into other things, considering what we have going on early in this slate, which is your lineups locking with like 60. We were talking on the show, 70% of your lineups basically are going to be locked as soon as 7:30 p.m. Eastern time hits. So how do we handle the Jalen Johnson news, if anything?
Yeah, it's a good call. There really is not a swap option that you could think of. You'd have to have extra money to go up to Wagner, which would feel pretty good if you could, but that's a lot of extra money to have laying around for another 2 position or another 2 position to have in that swap. So yeah, I'm with you on that. That's kind of tough. I think I do like Harden a little bit more than the field. So maybe having Harden with that gives you enough flexibility, but it's tough. I think Johnson looks like a good play on his face. I have 3.3% of him. Field's going to be at 5.3% according to Stokastic. That feels pretty good, I guess, to get some share of it. Everything else here doesn't look great. Trae Young, I have one of the lowest projections I had him in a while. I'm actually just under 40 fantasy points today. I'm at 39.9, which a little bit jarring to see, but I think having Hunter back in, having Bogdan back in, got a lot of usage guys. Okongwu shooting more, Jalen Johnson himself using the ball more, assisting and getting usage. So I think it's kind of pulling away from Trae in a way that's not helpful with his price tag still kind of carrying the previous results when nobody was on the team and available and he went nuts. And now he's still like, he should be like honestly 8K at this point, I feel like.
Isaiah Hardenstein's questionable today. Did I miss that entirely?
Yeah, he's questionable. I don't know if he's going to go or
Oh,
not, but he is questionable.
yeah. It's a left hand fracture. I would assume if he's questionable, he's playing. So, like, what was his tag again? I completely did not have that on my sheet. So,
Yeah, I took him out of my sheet this morning. I have to put him back in case he is getting minutes. So I honestly don't.
5,600, I can't do that. But I mean, the cardio's got to be good. You have a broken hand, you can still run.
Yeah, just what minutes they give him. Like, I don't think they're going to overload him on minutes on night one, though.
I don't know. 5,600 makes it hard because there's going to be no usage there. He'd have to basically just rebound and block the shit out of it the entire day. But I don't know. It's a bummer because I would want to play him, but I think the price tag makes it pretty tough.
Yeah, I agree.
Alrighty. News channel. Yes. Thank you, News God. I apologize to everybody involved. Obviously, switching on to the deeper dive, updating my stuff here a little bit earlier than normal. But yeah, that one just kind of went completely over my head. But those are the kind of things with Jalen Johnson where, we always talk about odd shopping over on the Odd Shopper. Riddle me that. But the whole point is like, you would always shop for the best lines. Well, I want to think about how I could possibly take Jalen Johnson and either make him the play or I need to have some swaps in mind. And there's some ways that I've figured out with Kevin Porter Jr., and we'll get to that one at the very end of this one. But there's some things that I've figured out with swaps with him specifically where I won't get completely stuck with that Jalen Johnson, but it will not be good to have 10, 12% of him because I'd like to try to take some shots on it against Golden State. Not the easiest matchup by any means, but nearly a 240 total. And we've seen him just really take on a workload whenever active. He's been awesome. Dyson Daniels has been awesome. Prices are getting up there, though, for sure. Golden State side, Steph Curry. If you want to play Steph Curry, have that. Do you have anything on the Golden State side?
Got 20% Steph, 5% Wiggins. The Steph part,
Okay.
more important part to me. If you're not going to play Giannis, think you play Steph. Try to capture that upside, and then you could probably cram in a Steph and somebody else. You can cram in a Franz. You can cram in somebody else like Towns. That's sort of where I think I'm at with it. So, like Steph, he's been great on the year. He's shooting well, even by Steph standards, 64.5% true shooting. He's great. I don't know, really no complaints about him. And if you get him, great. And he's also killed Trae Young anecdotally, I think, but DVP stuff, we all know how that goes.
Yes, we do. Trae Young, confirmed, not a defender. Basically a cone. Yeah, basically just a cone out there chilling, living his life. We got one game to go. We have made it, and we're gonna. It was a little shaky there first when you spend 25 minutes on a first game, but lots to cover, and the live before lock crew will be covering that for sure. But we're gonna head to Clippers. We're gonna take on. It's gonna be hosting Orlando. That is. We've got 4.5 point, 3.5 point favorites now. Orlando is 204.5 total, and yet there's two pieces of chalk that exist in this game. You got Kevin Porter Jr. on the Clipper side and Franz Wagner, small forward, power forward. You just brought it up. He is $600 more than that of Jalen Johnson on the other side. Hard to get off of any Franz Wagner. Hard to get off of any specific amount of Jalen Johnson here just because of that $600 gap. There are some things where Kevin Porter Jr., you could turn that into Chris Dunn if you really have to and spend the 200 more. They're, not going to look as good in terms of projection, but there's some pivots you can make if you're trying to bypass people at the end. You won't get completely stuck holding the bag, but Franz Wagner's usage has been out of control without Paolo Banchero on the floor. Does it continue against this very ugly defensive matchup he has before him in the Clippers?
Yeah, it does seem like a defensively minded, pace down matchup, but I still think Franz is worth the play. He's just too good right now. He's got 30% usage, more than that, really. 30% assist rate, a little bit more than that. 1.27 fantasy points per minute. He's been, I think, the best version of himself with Banchero out. So no issue getting to him. I got 13.5% compared to the Fields 15, so not a big stand there, but I definitely would not want to have zero on the slate. And besides him on the seam, Jalen Suggs a little bit, but really nothing else pops for me besides Franz.
We got the news god. Member for 44 months. All hail Puppet Lindquist. I can't think of somebody who loves the Puppet Lindquist bit more than our guy Ron. I mean, he really likes Puppet Lindquist exponentially more than he likes me.
He's also, he knows the game. It's making you more famous, making me more famous. He's just helping us out. That's the news god for you. I love Ron.
Oh, the consigliere follows it up with Miss Puppet Lindquist. It's been a rough day. If you know, you know. Why has it been a rough day? What's going on?
Consigliere gave me a lot of bad info in the chat on the Splash Play NBA channel before this. He was like, Brandon Boston pulled, and I'm like, what? And he's talking about the prop market, like, because it was off of Prize Picks. And I'm like, no, you can't say Brandon Boston pulled when I'm doing this and everybody's getting rolled out. So he had a couple of misses, but it's okay. He's a good guy. He's a consigliere. How could he go wrong?
We got Franz Wagner in the Sims there, 21.3% exposure on your screen there from Jordan Klein. And then we jump over to the Kevin Porter Jr. side again. 12% Jonathan Isaac. We should actually talk about Jonathan Isaac. There's never going to be like crazy minutes upside, but at least there's hope. At least there's hope seeing 25 minutes against Philly that in certain matchups, they can utilize him. Goga Bitadze, it feels like if you're going to roll out Goga for like 32 minutes in a night, it's going to be against Zubats, no?
Yeah, I think it's reasonable. I mean, the thing is, Mo Wagner does enough of the similar things that it's hard to ever want Goga or expect Goga to get the minutes. He projects well for me, just not a priority on the slate relative to everything else. But whenever Carter's out, I think Goga looks okay, and the price tag's now leveled out a little bit, stabilized. So yeah, I don't hate that shout.
I'll shout out Kevin Porter Jr., who, again, this is going to be the push and pull of this slate for me. What happens when Craig Porter Jr. is not announced as starting? How far will his ownership drop? And trying to figure out the levels of Ty Jerome, Craig Porter Jr., and Kevin Porter Jr., I think is an extremely important part of the slate. 4,200 for him. I'm currently playing a lot more than 20%. We currently have 17.3% on that Sims. I'm a little bit north of that here at the moment. Ty Lue, you never know what you're going to get with this rotation. Chris Dunn, we've seen his minutes fall to 19 in 2 of the last 3. Mostly competitive spots. That Houston one, I mean, everybody got benched at the tail end of that thing. Kevin Porter Jr., 25, 27, but then only 16 minutes against Golden State. It's volatile. I'm not sure how many people just hammer it, but if we get both of those Cleveland pieces starting, I bet it gets trimmed down and I won't play almost any Kevin Porter Jr. And it would be even behooved to play a low-owned Kevin Porter Jr. How do you feel about him on today's slate, knowing Ty Lue can do anything at any given moment?
I think the price tag works, and again, small sample size stuff, but his usage has gone up with Norman Powell not in the court this year too. I think Powell's vacancy is just like a really big thing on the team because he's been a lot better this year. The usage has been there for him. They just need somebody else who kind of takes the pressure off and absorbs some possessions. That isn't Harden, that isn't Zubac. So I think for him, I actually don't mind Kevin Porter. Ownership's a little bit high at 20%, but 15 to me felt about right. And besides that on the team, just to expedite things, Harden, I got 10%. I think Harden's a good play if you're not going to play Giannis as well. To add him to the list of guys that is not that expensive and maybe can give you a similar ceiling.
All righty, y'all. Let's get ourselves the heck up out of here. We did a great job, I would say, on a crazy news slate, and it's only going to get crazier. Make sure you don't go anywhere. We got Live Before Lock coming on next. But first, I got to say goodbye to my friend, Puppet Lindquist / Chris Spags. Go follow him at Chris Spags over on X. Any final words for the people, my dude?
Make sure to check out @Splash Play NBA 4 p.m. every weekday. And it's a pleasure seeing you too, Eric. Even though you didn't say your favorite word, butt plug again, I showed up here because I'm ready to see EMac. EMac 2028, I guess. Is EMac going to be alive? Is he going to be okay for
that? Oh. Let's cut the stream now.
I didn't say
We're gone. Live Before Lock coming up next. Goodbye.
Don't be mean to yourself, EMac.
That'd be perfect, Chris. Thank you. All right, Stokastic, here we go. It's your old pal EMac joining you on a Wednesday here. We've got NBA action. It's going to be a fun one. Semi-staggered slate. Nothing cut off at the end, at least on DraftKings. They're getting us all the way to the finish of this one, which is going to be the Los Angeles Clippers hosting the Orlando Magic. We've got a lot of news. We've got some thinned out teams. We had a dynasty in the making fail. It looks like the Cavaliers are not going to go 82-0. How did you feel last night about their loss, Greg?
I mean, they were 6.5-point underdogs. So it wasn't massively surprising. Garland also got hurt during the game. So Garland got hurt. He went to the locker room. He came back. He played, but he was clearly not himself. And you saw it in the stat sheet too. I honestly think if they were playing any other opponent, they probably would have just held Garland out for the rest of the game. But he probably wanted to push himself back into the game, and ultimately it probably would have been better if he never went back into the game, considering finishing, I think it was 3 of 21 from the field. But no surprise after he got banged up, went to the locker room last night, tried to play through it. They limited his minutes a little bit yesterday, and they gave a little bit of extra second half run to guys like Craig Porter Jr. and Ty Jerome, who are going to be key for tonight's slate because got so many guys out for, well, both sides of that game because the Cavs also no Isaac Okoro, Sam Merrill's resting, no Dean Wade, and then you've also got no Darius Garland. So there's a lot of value there, and I know that this is a long-winded way of answering your question, which is basically I'm never going to be stunned when a team is a 6.5-point underdog and loses a game on the road. I'm never going to be surprised when anybody loses a game to the Boston Celtics.
Absolutely. That makes sense. So hitting the key things here on, I got to get rid of this ear thing. It's making wrong noises. Okay. So key people who are out, you kind of hit on it, but for everybody not here for the deeper dive, no Darius Garland, no Sam Merrill, no Isaac Okoro, no Max Strus, obviously, no Dean Wade, no Karis LeVert. So that's huge. It would not be a complete shock if if we got Donovan Mitchell or Jarrett Allen or Evan Mobley even being a late scratch. Will that occur? Probably not. They can get the win here pretty easily. Those guys can get some fourth quarter run, and they don't play again until Tuesday. So they get a tremendous amount of time off here. So this works up that those guys go hard for a first half into the third quarter, and then they're done. Allen, I think, would be the least likely to rest. He had the fewest minutes last night of that trio. Mitchell would be the most likely, but he could also, not have to go hard on the defensive side, be able to just direct the offense, hit some shots, make sure they get the win. So hopefully a relaxed thing. But as you've said, we've seen weirdness throughout this whole season. The weirdness be a little tough considering New Orleans is missing literally their entire starting lineup and then some. So we have Brandon Ingram is now hurt. He is joining CJ McCollum, DeJounte Murray, Herb Jones, Zion Williamson, Jose Alvarado, Jordan Hawkinson, Trey Murphy, and are all out. And then Missy is questionable. We also have Jalen Noel, who was released by the team. I think
some news, by the way, because we just found out that Missy is going to play. Same with Miles Turner. They're just ruled in.
Excellent. And we did we get a starting lineup yet? Ty Jerome is reportedly expected to start is the other news I see. This should be coming in quick as we both get towards lock, and we just cleared that 6:30 injury report. So we'll see if anything trickles out. The one thing I did want to call it, no Jalen Noel, but we might get some elf on the shelf for the holidays. Alfred Payton was signed by the Pelicans. So, hey, there is that. But literally their entire opening day starting lineup is out. Technically, Daniel Tice started in place of an injured Zion Williams on the opening day. But, yeah, that's quite a mess. It looks like Yang is going to start.
Yep. So we just got the starting lineup here for the Cavaliers amongst, big news drop. Always seems to happen at the start of the show. And they know. Even if we change the start time of the show, they know, and they know when to break the news. And it's just as the deep dive ends and as live before lock is beginning. But we've got the 2 injury pieces that just gave the update on. So Misi, he was questionable. He's in. Miles Turner, he was questionable. He's in. And then also we got this starting lineup for the Cleveland Cavaliers, which a little bit different than expected because it is George Niang and Ty Jerome moving into the starting lineup, which means Craig Porter Jr. coming off the bench. Now, that's still going to make Craig Porter Jr. very playable for today. But if he was starting, he might have been a guy who was going to be in 100% of my lineups coming off the bench. He's still somebody who I'm going to have as probably my most rostered player on the entire slate, but won't be in 100%. I'm going to have to rerun everything now for the starting lineup for the Cavaliers once we get some data updates.
And that makes sense. I know the comparator, Lindy was talking about it a little bit on the other show, and as we get more news, we'll hit on it more. But Kevin Porter Jr. was a potential pivot. Now that would be because the Norman Powell is out for the Clippers, so we don't know for sure who's going to join the starting lineup. It makes sense that it's Porter Jr. It doesn't have to be. They could put in a variety of other guards there, but he should see additional minutes. The wild card, though, is he really doesn't play much over 25 minutes thus far. So even if he does start, how's that going to work? And he does have the tougher matchup going against the Orlando Magic defense, as opposed to going against the shorthanded, or probably the shorthanded Pelicans there, who I still kind of prefer Porter Jr. Haha, they're both Porter Jr. I prefer Craig at Porter Jr. still, even if he's coming off the bench, because I suspect he should get extended fourth quarter run in place of pick one of the key Cavs that's still ambulatory. So that's kind of my thoughts on it. But yeah, I agree 100%, no more. 70%, I don't have any issue with that, with him coming off the bench. Probably cuts about 4 or 5 minutes off his projection. I'm still okay with that.
Yeah, and let's see, what was our projection for him in terms of minutes? If this has already been updated, then I'm not going to be able to.
I've got the other one.
Yeah, so we have
30.2 is what it was before.
Yeah, so he'll still be projected to play a healthy amount of minutes, but instead of the 30.2, it'll probably be, I don't know, maybe something like 28 or something like that off the bench for Craig Porter Jr. But we'll see when the projections end up updating. We also found out here, did you see that Tyrese Maxey news that came through, EMac?
No, I did not. Is he? And I heard he was kind of mad.
Was and is still questionable. He's going to be a game time decision, but we got the terrible coach speak, the absolutely no good, very terrible coach speak, which is he will have a pretty short minutes restriction if he plays Wednesday per Coach Nurse. So I
when you go from a doctor to a nurse, do you expect any clarification on the medical?
Absolutely not. And the way that we always get it would be, it'd be really helpful if coach just said 20 to 24 minutes, but they never do that. They'll say, we're going to monitor his minutes. We are going to keep a close eye on his conditioning. He is going to be playing, I quote, and also there's an endless amount of ways that they could describe players' minutes restrictions. This one is pretty short minutes restriction. Somehow there's always different verbiage every single time one of these players is on restriction, and we never know what it's supposed to mean. So I'll take this as Tyrese Maxey is going to play, I don't know, mid-20s minutes, while understanding that I'm just making my best educated guess, considering he was dealing with a lower body injury that typically inhibits players' abilities to really keep their cardio up while they're out. So I don't think that Tyrese Maxey, if he does end up playing, is going to be somebody that we want exposure to for DFS, because he's still fairly expensive. He's $8,600 on DraftKings. On FanDuel, Maxey's $8,100. And that's going to be something that really makes it hard to project him really well if he's going to be playing some sort of restricted minutes. But if he's in, what that is going to do is that's going to take away some usage away from guys like Joel Embiid and Paul George.
Yeah. How do you feel about Embiid? He's been back for 3 games. The volume of his shots, it was sort of there for the first couple, trailed off in the last one. He led the league, 2 of the last 3 years in scoring. So, I mean, he should be able to put up points in a hurry when that happens. I had been recommending the under on his points prop for the last couple games. At some point, he's going to get there, or they're going to bring it below 20, whatever they've been putting it at. I didn't look at it for today because I didn't want to go against him today. But how do you feel about anybody else with all 3 of them there? Is there anybody playable from Philly for you?
So it's going to depend on the answer is yes. I like Joel Embiid as a tournament option, and there's a couple of reasons why. First off, Joel Embiid, it's pretty clear they're trying to get his conditioning up, and we've seen him play. Even last game, he was sick. He was questionable to play. He was a game time decision. He ends up playing, and he played garbage time. Even though he was questionable, he was dealing with an illness. So they already had, McCain, their rookie, who's been they didn't even play McCain in garbage time, and they had Joel Embiid out there, which I think was just to get his conditioning up. So you got 31 and a half minutes out of Joel Embiid in a game where they were getting blown out. And I really do think that was solely because they want to get his conditioning up. And he is also at a point now where everybody is off of him. He's projected for 3% ownership. All the narratives are against him as well. And I get that Tyrese Maxey coming back would, in theory, inhibit the usage of Joel Embiid, but he's priced down. He is now $9,800 on DraftKings. Over on FanDuel, Joel Embiid is $10,400, which I'm not going to tell you it's crazy cheap price tags, but that's not the normal price tag for Joel Embiid. So he's already priced for aspects like his performance not being all that great and also less usage this year playing alongside Paul George in addition to Tyrese Maxey. But I really do think that there's a ceiling for Joel Embiid, and I don't know how anybody could argue with that just as a blanket statement. There's a ceiling for Joel Embiid. He's clearly extremely risky. I played him the other day, and it was very risky, and it didn't go all that well. With that said, though, I want to be on Joel Embiid, especially on a slate like this where we have a ton of value. It's really easy to spend up for players, but the field is all spending up for the same guys. If I go and look at our ownership projections and where we have it right now, we have Giannis is projected for 60% ownership. You got Şengün for 44% ownership. Then you got Karl Anthony Towns at 16% ownership. It's not all that crazy there. But what the field is doing is the field is paying up for Şengün and the field is paying up for Giannis. They're great options. If it's just points per dollar, just looking at projections, those are the guys I want to get to the most. They're also guys I would want to be playing in cash games. But for this massive GPP, for these big, massive GPPs that we have today on DraftKings and FanDuel, I want to find places I could reasonably be contrarian. And I don't think fading guys like Ty Jerome or Craig Porter Jr. is the best path for that. But I do think paying up for some of these high-priced guys that are pulling less ownership is a reasonable way to do it. And that's where somebody like Joel Embiid stands out. And it's not all that hard to get overweights to the field to him. If you guys play 20 lineups and you have one of them with Joel Embiid, you're about double the field on him.
And that I think is getting there first. You guys talk about it all the time on these shows. I think that is one of the most important things that we have. There's I want to see it with my own eyes. And then there's that's probably too late, especially in DFS with the NBA, because when it happens, it's going to be too late. So one of your hedges could be to play him and then put something on the under on his scoring or potentially his PRA. If you're looking to sort of hedge out some of that downside risk. That sort of thing doesn't always work out between DFS and sports wagering, but it's a way to sort of get advantage and capture that upside, but also profit a little bit or get a little insurance back if it doesn't happen. One thing I want to mention is all these great tools here, Greg. Let's talk about how we can get some of these pretty much for free. So we've got our best offer going on right now. This is the Stokastic, we call it the link join offer here, but you guys, if you sign up for any of the 11 sites here, if you're not already a member of those on the page, go to that landing spots or go to the landing page and you can see the different ways you can get 30 days of the Stokastic Sims. It'll tell you the different offers. Some of the sports wagering you need to deposit $10 and wager $5. Some you need to put in 20 and wager 10. But it'll tell you all the different rules there. Same thing for the pick'em sites. Once you have done that and completed your first wager or pick'em card, send us a screenshot, both of your welcome email and your settled first bet, and we will get you hooked up. This is send it to Stokastic. Support at stokastic.com, not on Twitter, support at stokastic.com, the email. We will get you 30 days of your choice of any sport for the Sims. You want NFL, you can have NFL. You want NBA, you got NBA. You want both, sign up for 2 of the sites. You want to sign up for 4 of the sites and get 4 months of NBA, we'll stack it for you. It's the best offer we've got going on right now. This one isn't going to last forever, but this is a real generous way that you guys can get in, help us a little bit, we'll help you. And then you get to have the Sims, and hopefully you can build your bankroll in that fashion. All right, Greg, we've got...
by the way, just because people are asking about the Miles Turner, there was a reporter who reported out that Miles Turner was going to play today. For what it's worth, it's a Rockets reporter. It's not a Pacers reporter, Ben Dubois. I think that's how it's pronounced, but he was the one who is reporting that Miles Turner will play today. Because I saw a couple people asking who it was. It is funny because I saw somebody in the reply said, "What is your source?" But he's a reporter, so like he would be the source. So I would assume that it's information he got from the game. So with that in mind, that's why I'm assuming Miles Turner will play today.
We would hope. We would hope there is a source if it's from a reporter. Steve Van Dam, or sorry, me, Sam Van Dam has a $5 super chat here. He would like to know what is the difference in the sim setting between the low stakes marquee and the high stakes, and how would that apply to the $5 100,000 to first contest on DraftKings?
Sure. So if you guys are actually, Jordan, could you put the sims up on screen, put the contest generator on just so we could show people what it is that we're talking about? All right. So when you guys are building out the lineups in the contest generator, you're going to see this contest archetype slider, and you got high stakes, you got marquee, you got low stakes. And the purpose of the contest generator is you're building a field of lineups that's expected to emulate what it is that the field is doing. But if you're somebody who's played DFS a while, like EMac has, you'll know EMac. What's one of the most easily observed things about playing at different stakes? The ownership is different, right? When you play in a higher stakes contest, it's sharper fields. They gravitate more towards the guys who are the highest points per dollar projected players. And then in lower dollar fields, you'll see some softer lineups where people aren't playing all of the top projected points per dollar plays, maybe not reacting to news as quickly. So the purpose of the contest archetype slider is that you could adjust the projected ownership based on the stakes that you're playing at. So if you're playing in something like the dime time, there's those 10-cent contests on DraftKings, or if you're playing in the 5-cent 150 max contest on FanDuel, you would set it towards low stakes. And then conversely, if you're playing in something like a $1,500 single entry, or like a 333, like they've got those baseball tournaments sometimes that pay out a lot to first place, and it's like $3,000 entries, and it's a smaller field. So for things that are those really high buy-in contests, you'd select high stakes. The majority of the contests you play are going to be marquee. So Sam asked in his super chat, what would the $5 100K to first be considered? That's marquee. Any of those massive big field flagship contests, like the Millie Maker on DraftKings, the Millie Maker on FanDuel, or the contest, I forget exactly what it's called today, the zone or whatever it is, that $5 100K to first, those are going to be your marquee contests. That's where you're selecting the majority of the time when you're building your lineups out here. So that's what you want to do. You select the one that most closely resembles the contest that you're playing in. And if you're playing in multiple contests, well, then you could do multiple runs with different settings, and then you could use the entry manager tool to select the different lineups that you're playing. And so just to summarize, though, for today's contest, the $5 100K, set it on marquee.
All right. How would you do that would you go to when you're on the low dollar or smaller tournaments? What if you're in 1,000-person contest? What would you choose for the setting if 10% went to first?
What's the buy-in?
$10.
$10? I'd probably still leave that at marquee.
Okay. All righty. Looking at some of our other news items here, we did get word on Portland, so we know no DeAndre Ayton and no Anthony Simons there. He is dealing with an illness. Isaiah Hartenstein is questionable. He's kind of in that window where he's ready to return, or to make his debut at least, for the Oklahoma City Thunder. He fractured his left hand, so conditioning hopefully is not an issue. Suspect he'd be brought in, 25 to 28 minutes, kind of as the cap in his debut, but that would still be relatively close to reasonably full run. So it will be fun. No Chet Holmgren there, so the Thunder are really hoping they can get him back in action soon. If it doesn't happen today, it should happen in the next game or two. So that was a little bit new. Indiana is still missing a few people. Nemhard is out, continues to be out, as does Aaron Nesmith. We mentioned
Big update. We just got another change in the starting lineup for the Cavs. It is Ty Jerome, Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, and Jalen Tyson is the other starter. So George Niang no longer starting for Cleveland. It is now Jalen Tyson in the starting lineup. I assume he's he's 3K on DraftKings, and on FanDuel, he is 3,500. And I assume if the game was a blowout, he'd be playing in garbage time as well.
That would be my thoughts. I don't know anything about him. So he was a first round selection this year, 20th overall, out of Texas Tech. Well, he's played with Texas, Texas Tech, and Cal. He has played in the last 5 games. He is a grand total of, let's call it, barely 20 minutes. I know, Greg, you like to work some mojo here and figure out what his rates ought to be. I'm assuming you're going to set this one at about 0.8 fantasy points per minute, since he is going to be playing in the front court and 24 minutes. Is that a reasonable placeholder here, since he is in the starting lineup and we know pretty much nothing about what he's going to do with the pros?
Let me look up his. I haven't thought too much about Jalen Tyson. He's barely played this year as well, so there's nothing you could really pull for his points minute rates. He's played 25 minutes the entire season.
Yeah.
So
that's why I went with the 0.8 per minute. He's been in the front court. That's about reasonable in this matchup.
Jalen Tyson. Let's
and
see.
quickly, while you're looking, so he played in Texas his freshman year, didn't do much, played for Texas Tech his sophomore year, started all 31 games, averaged 10 points per minute, and then he went to Cal for his junior year. That was his final year in college. He was scored almost 20 points per game, 34 minutes per game, almost 7 rebounds, 3.5 assists. So looks like a decent all-around player there for the Pac-12. But again, we don't have much of a baseline here for him in the pros. So when looking at that and just making a rough guesstimate, as we're waiting for the projection teams to come in and sort of figure out where they are, when you look at front court players, they've got a better chance of getting some rebounds, closer in shots. I tend to say, 0.8 per minute. If we don't know what they're getting, if it's an unknown backcourt player, I go like 0.66, 0.7 if I need a placeholder, and then I wait and see what the guys who really are digging into this come up with. But if you're in a pinch, that's one way you can calculate that.
Yeah, I really want to see what our projection ends up being for Jalen Tyson, because I'm just going to go off. Like, I don't have a strong opinion on him other than the fact that he's starting. He's very cheap. He's somebody we're going to want to be getting exposure to. Beyond that, I couldn't look at Jalen Tyson and tell you I have some strong opinion on how he should be as a fantasy producer. Here's what we had him in for with him coming off the bench. We had him playing 18 minutes, and at 18 minutes, he was projected for 11.44 fantasy points. So let's say we were to bump him to 30 minutes, and we assume that then, his fantasy projection is going to go up comparably. So then you'd be getting him around like 17, 18 fantasy points for a projection or something like that, which would certainly have him in play at a cheap price point. He's more so on DraftKings than FanDuel because the min price is lower, but I don't think he's somebody who I'm going to be playing in like 60% of lineups or anything like that. There's still better value options. I'd still rather play Ty Jerome. I'd still rather play Craig Porter Jr. than him.
All right. Well, Jeff Williams is looking to make a strong stand. He is playing the 777 on DraftKings, and he has left us a super chat here. You may want to pull this up, but he's asking us for our thoughts on the players in his lineup. So I think Ty Jerome is a really good piece of chalk. Let's hold on Mitchell. You've got Franz Wagner, who has just been outstanding lately. He's going to be going against the Clippers. I like that one. You have Robert Williams. He's probably on a light minutes cap of around 24 to 26 most games here. He can pile up the fantasy points. He's really cheap. He's also popular, but I think that's an acceptable one. Şengün, also popular, but I love the upside there. He's going with Kevin Porter Jr. to get a little bit of differentiation there. Jamal Cain and Zach LaVine. I think Zach LaVine is intriguing against Milwaukee there. How do you feel about Mitchell and LaVine? I think those are kind of the less common options, or at least the ones that he's probably a little more hesitant on clicking as his differentiation plays.
Yeah, so it's going to be a very contrarian lineup in that 7-7-7 field, which I assume Craig Porter Jr. If you're not playing Craig Porter Jr. in that field, you might be the only person who doesn't play him. But if you look through, Jordan plugged it into the single lineup sims, and It ended up being a solidly positive ROI lineup, 25.7%. You're clearly playing for first with that contrarian of a lineup, but if it's going to sim out well in the single lineup sims, I don't have an issue with any of the individual players in that lineup. It's just very bold and risky, but I don't think that's problematic for today.
Right. Let's see. I'm guessing we're going to get another circle of news here. So I'll get that back
I'll
up.
also, there was one other super chat as well.
Ooh.
And then there was a bunch of questions in Discord, which you could answer too. But
I've got that
Eric
open.
Goodwin wanted to know our thoughts on Reeves tonight, and then Towns is a late night hammer. Yeah, Towns is very clearly a good pay up option for today. And I actually think he's going a little bit under owned by the field. I think he serves as a pretty good pivot off of Şengün, because you're getting Cat at about a third of the ownership of Şengün. And I know that Şengün is cheaper, but we're not that stretched for salary today. And Cat, $1,400 more expensive. I think the ownership gap is too big between him and Şengün. So I think that Şengün is a better cash game option for GPPs, though. I think Cat is a pretty solid contrarian guy to be paying up for. And then as far as Reeves goes, I don't think I'm really getting to him in lineups. Let me check. I'm going to have to rerun stuff for this Cavs lineup. By the way, Tyrese Maxey's starting too. We just got a projections update that came through as well. Yeah, so Antonio Reeves at 3K, he's in the same sort of situation as when we were just talking about with the Cavs starting lineup and the fact that they are now going to be starting Jalen Tyson. I view Reeves as being pretty similar, where he's a guy who is projected for 18 fantasy points for us at min price. So having him in lineups, totally fine, but there's also better value plays available on the slate.
So looking at Reeves, just real quick, 5-year player, first 3 at Illinois State, last 2 at Kentucky, led the, I don't know if that's the league or the nation, but it almost a 45% from 3-point range on nearly 6 attempts per game, averaged 20 points per game. So decent at putting the biscuit in the basket. While he may not need to create, or he may not have the ability to create his own shot, he does have the ability to probably shoot some open jumpers, if not from behind the 3-point arc. That would be something that's helpful at $3,000. But I still think he's, like our projections kind of came out, 18 to 20 fantasy points.
Yeah. Which, once again, if you play somebody who's min price and they score 18 to 20 fantasy points, there are a lot of those guys on this slate, Jalen Tyson being another one of them. But I still don't like them more than the Ty Jerome, Craig Porter Jr. type of guys.
These are the fun conversations to have. We haven't had that particular one this many times yet. Usually that's a few months down the road. Nope, not the way the NBA is now. We're doing that in the first month of action. Looking at the Discord here, Jason says, don't worry, SGA is going to get scratched 1 minute after lock at some point this year. Don't put that juju out there, Jason. Go work on the projections. Come on. Come on. Let's see. Where are those questions?
It's cool. They're tagged in me, so I could read them off.
Oh, I keep rolling for my name here. Sorry.
Yeah. No, all good. So, hey, I'm Drew. First, he wants to know his normal question for cash games. He wants to know who are the guys who he must be playing in cash for today. So, yeah, over on DraftKings, these are the guys who I'd consider the core plays for cash tonight. For sure, Giannis is the pay-up option. Şengün is the secondary pay-up option. Ty Jerome, even coming off the bench, Craig Porter Jr. still really strong cash option. Jamal Cain, I also think you should be playing in cash. Those 5 guys, and oh my God, we just got the starting lineup for the Pelicans. It's too bad we can't play him, EMac, because he's not in the player pool on either side. But Elfrid Payton is starting.
Yes!
Yep, he's starting.
Jam those props. It's the way to get there, Greg.
Every time something comes out, I keep starting to run a sim, and then new piece of news comes out, and then we have to restart everything. But yeah, this is in chat. David Wayne said that lineup is ass. Yeah, I mean, there was no other way that if you look at all the players who are out and who they have available, there was no possibility for a good starting lineup. But Elfrid Payton, I don't even know what he's been doing lately. He might not have been playing basketball for the last couple of years. When's the last time Elfrid Payton's played an NBA game?
I've lost track, but I know at one point I think he was with the Pelicans at one point. He was kind of circling with the Suns towards the end of his tenure. I
The
mean, think of how
2021 season is the last time he played in the NBA.
2021. It's been 3 years.
Yep.
Oh wow. Okay, so
So like,
he's
I don't know. And also for DFS, it doesn't matter. He's not in the player. Well, for rostering him, it doesn't matter because he's not in the player
right.
pool. But with him starting, that's potential minutes that could come away from other guys. But yeah, it would be hilarious if Elfrid Payton put up a triple double
Triple
starting in this
double
spot. But
just
Payton,
because.
Boston, Javonte Green, Jeremiah Robinson Earl, and Yves Missi is that starting lineup there. It's terrible.
Just looking, he did not have a triple double in his last season. I also somehow forgot he had 2 years with the Knicks.
Yeah.
But
and then also David Wayne said
anyway,
Peyton used to have the best hair in the league. That's also not true. He had to cut it off because for years it inhibited his ability to shoot jump shots because the ball would frequently hit his hair, which was one of the dumbest shortcomings that players ever had. But he's back. He's starting. That's how down bad the Pelicans are. Somebody had messaged me earlier today and asked actually multiple people had messaged me today asking if they should roster Jalen Noel today. Jalen Noel was chalk a week ago for a DFS league. He's not even on the Pelicans anymore. They cut him.
No, that's just wrong to cut Jalen Noel. I mean, come on. University of Washington.
Because or else how are they can't start Elfrid Payton.
But he was University of Washington. Just go Huskies. Come on. Pierre says, Mondour, me friends. I don't know what friends is in French. I just arrived. If I missed, can you please throw out your favorite FanDuel players at each position? Sure. That I think is a good question here. Let me call that up and we can go.
Yeah, I've got it here if you just want me to go over the ones here for
you mean
myself.
They'd rather hear your thoughts than mine? Who would have guessed?
Yeah.
Take her away.
At point guard, Ty Jerome. At shooting guard, Brandon Boston Jr. At small forward, Jamal Cain. At power forward, Giannis. And then at center, Şengün. A lot of those guys are fairly popular. So if you're looking for some contrarian options to make it different, I'd say Joel Embiid is a spend-up option at center. He's projected for 1% ownership on FanDuel.
All right. Producer Jordan Klein, we did that one, and it's not Austin Reeves. It is other Reeves. Antonio. I'm looking at our projections. We knew this was going to bubble up like this, but it's basically the top seven of the top 8 are coming from Cleveland and the Pellies.
Yeah. And I assume we're going to have an update coming for the starting lineup for the Pelicans. Although maybe we had Peyton projected to start. I actually don't even really know just because he's not on our projections page since he's not in the player. Oh, we just got a projections update. So let's see what the Pelicans guys are looking like now. And then we'll get some more of you guys' questions. I see we had a super chat come in and there were some questions in Discord. But yeah, Jordan, put the Pelicans player projections on the screen. And the top end guy here, it's Brandon Boston. We've got him projected for 35 fantasy points. We've got Javonte Green and Yves Missi, each at 26 fantasy points. Jeremiah Robinson Earl also at 26 fantasy points. Then just under 20 fantasy points, Jamal Cain and Antonio Reeves. Then Trey Jemison, he's in there for 16 fantasy points. He's another one of those guys, really cheap price point, who's projected for somewhere from 15 to 20 fantasy points. So those are all guys who are projected to play today for the Pelicans and probably won't be massive pieces of the rotation at the end of the season. So that's what we have now that the Pelican starters are updated.
All right, a couple others here. How are you feeling about Kobe White or Zach LaVine FanDuel scoring?
Yeah, so over on FanDuel, let's see, LaVine and Kobe White. Yeah, so between the two of them, I'm actually getting a little bit more than the field on each of them. I think that both of them, you can make cases for them being a little bit underpriced in the absence of Patrick Williams. But I had nearly 20% of Zach LaVine in my last run, and with him projected for just over 10% ownership, I think he looks like a really good upside play at $7,300. So I like LaVine for GPPs for sure there, Dustin. So between the two of them, I actually think both of them are relatively decent contrarian GPP plays, but LaVine the stronger option of the two.
All right, another super chat here says, what usage rate does Stokastic have for Shaden Sharp on, he's taken over 60 shots in the last 3 games, but he seems low with his projections. I do agree he seems a little low with his projections, but keep in mind over those last 3 games, he has made almost 51% of his shots, almost 40% from 3, and he's taking 7.7 threes per game. He's not that kind of a shooter for his career, so that is boosting things to, I don't want to say an unsustainable rate, because that doesn't mean it's not going to happen again tonight, but he's a career 44% shooter, 45% shooter. So that if you back that, if you put those numbers on there, he'll fall down to about 30 fantasy points would be my guess. I don't know what we have him projected at. We have him projected at 29.5 fantasy points. So again, range of outcomes is the key thing here. He's got the matchup against OKC. Not a bad, I mean, not a good matchup. Even without Chet Holmgren, OKC is still a pretty decent defense. Portland missing some key players, so that means he gets more offense. We've seen him for the last 2 years create his own shot and kind of do everything, but he doesn't have a lot of people taking attention off him. Could he get 40 fantasy points again tonight? Sure. Wouldn't surprise me at all, but median outcome's probably closer to 30, and that's more or less what we're seeing here on the screen. But it's a good question, right? Sometimes you want to look at those anomalies like, he's been crushing it. He's going to continue that forever. Wait, maybe not. So, the good question on that one. One more super chat.
To back up what you're saying, if a player is making a bunch of their shots, it's just going to make them more apt to take more shots. So I do think we're going to see a little bit of regression in some of the shooting rates for Shaden Sharp. And then as a result of that, he's not going to want to shoot, 12 threes in a game or something like that if he's making them at his normal rate as opposed to everything falling. But he's also in a really tough matchup. He's playing against the Oklahoma City Thunder, and it could also be the debut. I expect it will be the debut of Isaiah Hartenstein with the team. And if that's the case, I mean, that team at full strength, it's going to be a monster.
The haves and the have-nots are pretty crazy at this point in the league. Do you want to run position by position for DK? That is for Eddie.
Let's get to more of the questions in Discord, because there's a bunch of them sitting here for us. And we're still waiting on an ownership projection before I could rerun everything. But Jaw1224 says, am I crazy for getting under the field on Craig Porter, thinking of getting 50% in my 20 max? I mean, 50% of them isn't really under the field anymore. It's right around even with the field. I think that's a reasonable amount. His ownership has gone down now that he isn't starting anymore. JEW is asking us, Brandon Boston and Steph Curry or Jalen Green and Karl Anthony Towns in an all chalky DK single entry lineup. Assuming that you are playing a lot of the Cavs guys, or you're playing all the chalk, I prefer the Brandon Boston side, because you're going to need that game to be, kind of competitive if you're getting a lot of exposure there. And Jalen Green, I don't really have in that many lineups as of right now. I do like Cat. I like both ends of it, but I'm going to lean towards the Boston side just because you're playing a lot of Cavs guys.
Right. We did just get our updates. So we'll answer one question. Then if you want to run through DK, this is a specific one for Trip. He says 4,500 on DK. Who is your favorite last guy in? Assuming you already have Ty Jerome, I would lean towards Robert Williams as my first option. And my second option would probably be Craig Porter Jr., I guess. I'm not overly enthralled with him. So if you have that utility slot, I would prefer Robert Williams myself. Do you have an answer on that one, Greg?
Yeah, Time Lord, Robert Williams. That's the guy to go with there.
And then how are you feeling about DK across the positions?
Have to run a sim before I know what my final.
I thought you were the human computer. Come on, you just do this stuff all day. Life's a sim here.
Yeah, well, I've got everything running right now, but we've also got some more questions from Discord. One here from Sniffs, and Sniffs 1, 2, 3, 4. It is what's the question here? Snips is saying, are you worried about laying Mitchell or Allen or Mobley? This was a very physical game yesterday. Do you think that they just sit when they go up? Not necessarily. If you're asking me, will they play in the fourth quarter of a blowout? The answer is probably not. But if the game's competitive, I think that they are going to see their full minutes. It's just more of a question of will the game be competitive or not. but I don't think that there's, and do you feel strongly differently, Mac? Like, I don't think they're going into this game and saying we can't play Donovan Mitchell more than 30 minutes because of what happened yesterday. If they didn't want to be playing these guys this early in the season, they would just rest them today. They would hold them out like they're doing with Darius Garland. They're going to play it by ear. If the game isn't competitive, they won't play in the fourth quarter. That is live to happen because the spread's somewhere around 15 points for that game, depending which book you look at. So, yeah, if the game's a blowout, they'll be out late. There's more risk of that in a normal game. But otherwise, that's not really a concern for me.
Yeah, and are they going balls to the wall on both sides of the floor tonight? No, I don't think so. Are they going to go out there, play relatively hard and get the win? That's the most likely outcome. That gets them into the third quarter. That gets them around 28 minutes. That's, I think, more what you want to think about. The only way that, short of them tweaking something, for them not to play is if somehow the Pelicans are just raining down every three with this absolute patchwork lineup that they're putting together, and the Cavs get down by 25 plus. And even then, we don't have to be entirely sure that they don't feel, we'll get it back in 10 minutes. So, but it's a good question, though, right? These are decision points. So, but.
And then we've got Gator Nation wants to know, can you guys go over how I could boost a player in The Sims? Yeah, really easy. After you run Jordan's got it up on screen. Just go to the ROI boost. If you wouldn't mind, Jordan, click on the ROI boost. Yeah. And then you would just boost a player negatively if you wanted less of them, positively if you wanted more of them. Then at the end, you press boost ROI. Then you unfavorite your top lineups, then refavorite the top one. Just do a sample here. Go do plus 10% on Şengün, or whatever number. The number doesn't matter, Jordan. Then just do boost ROI, then go to the lineups tab, unfavorite the top 150, refavorite the top 150. And there you go. That's all there is to it, Gator Nation. That's how you would go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
Then Cream wants to know, would you play Donovan Mitchell with this being a big chance of a blowout? Yeah, I have Donovan Mitchell exposure. There's other pay-up guys that I prefer to him. So if I was playing one lineup, Donovan Mitchell wouldn't be in it. If I was playing 5 lineups, Donovan Mitchell wouldn't be in any of them. But yeah, I have some Donovan Mitchell exposure. It's not a significant portion, though.
All right, 11 minutes to go. Allrat, $2 super chat. How much Torrey Craig on DK at 3K? None. He's going to be, 34 in 1 month. He's played in 3 games. Yes, we get points for defense, but it's going to be hard for him to be fantasy relevant at all. I'd rather play any of the whoever, Jalen Tyson, or was that his name? Yeah, Jalen Tyson, or the other guy we talked about, Antonio Reeves. I'd rather play both those guys.
We also got a question from Johnny. He wants to know, is Taurean Prince in play? Is Prince over Kane for leverage? I don't think that I don't think there's any real correlation between Taurean Prince and Jamal Kane where I would call him a leverage option. But no, Taurean Prince isn't somebody who I really want to be playing today.
All right. Is McLean still in play with the Philly regulars back tonight?
No. You have to think he's going to play less minutes. He was on pace to play 40 minutes last game if it wasn't for the blowouts. We finished at 36, I think it was. There's no way he gets 40 minutes or paces for 40 minutes regularly with everybody back. The other part of this, too, is his usage has to come down. There's no way going forward that we would expect McCain to be a higher usage guy than players like Tyrese Maxey, Paul George, Joel Embiid. And for a long time, he's been the highest usage guy on the team because of the amount of players that have been out. So as far as he goes, you have to think that his production is about to come down, but he's priced as high as he's been the entire season because of how well he's played lately. So this is the inverse of what you look for in value, as opposed to it being a key player is out and making it so that a player is underpriced. Instead, you have a guy who just played well because guys were out. His price goes up. Then those guys come back and he loses out on usage. So McCain, that would be a no-go today. I am not going to play him.
All right. I've got my stuff run. Did you run your DK? We can run through the favorite positions at each player. Favorite players.
Let's finish answering the questions. And we got a lot of questions from subs. We got to finish answering them.
Those bastards aren't tagging me. We hit on the Torrey Craig one flat minimum. Do not go there. Greg,
COVID Bryant II wants to know how many Pelicans am I averaging? I'm not actually sure. If I had to guess, probably a little over one Pelicans players per lineup, something like 1.5. That would be my best guess. Matty T also asked thoughts on Torrey Craig, which no real need to play Torrey Craig today. There's a lot of better value options. And then we've got a question here from, let me refresh. Let's see. What is our most recent projection on Torrey Craig now? It was something around 15 fantasy points, right?
15. Yeah, it was 15. Refresh.
Yeah, Torrey Craig,
like
we have at 15.91 fantasy points. There's so many guys who are similar like this. If you have a couple of lineups with Torrey Craig over the course of a bunch, I wouldn't have an issue with it, but there's so many better value plays that I'm not going to be prioritizing him at all. JEW wants to know, okay, here's an interesting question. Who do we want to be over and underweight to, EMac? Here's a good way that we could address some of the ownership, because it's easy to say that. It's also why I don't really like the players we're getting the most at each position for this particular slate, EMac, because it's going to be like Ty Jerome is going to be the guy at point guard, but everybody knows to play Ty Jerome. It's more of something like, what are we doing to these guys? What are we going to do with these guys relative to their ownership? So we could run through some of the chalk, EMac, and go through whether we like them as chalk or maybe who we're pivoting to get instead of them in some spots. So like for me at center, yeah, Şengün's a great option. He's probably going to be, when I update everything, the guy I have the most exposure to at center. But relative to his ownership, I think I'm going to be a little bit underweight to him. And instead, I'll be looking at guys like Karl-Anthony Towns and Joel Embiid as pivot options.
All right, I'm going the other way. I'm going to be over on Şengün. I am going to be over on Robert Williams. I'm also playing two sites on Yahoo. I'm not playing Şengün. I couldn't get there, so I'm getting the Şengün exposure here by going heavily over the field. That is my most owned player. That could be risky, but I'm willing to roll with it.
Read off some of the other players, high projected ownership, and we could talk through them as well.
We've got Antetokounmpo at about 60%.
Once again, I'm going to have a lot of exposure to Giannis. My last run, I had 45% of him. So if we're just talking about most rostered players at each position, Giannis would be one of those guys. But I want to make room for other pay-up options, and I want to have some differentiation points from the field. So I'll be a little bit underweight to the field on Giannis.
I am as well, but he is in my Yahoo lineup. I'm going 14% below the field on Giannis. If we look at small forward, it looks like relatively even here, but Jason Tyson and Antonio Reeves are the two cheapies that are popping. Zach LaVine, they're all in the 25% range there. Looks like I'm mirroring them, except I'm well under on Reeves.
Okay.
Mirroring the others, but I do have Franz Wagner. I do have him on Yahoo. I do have a lot of him on FanDuel or on DraftKings. I like this spot for him tonight. Shooting guard.
I like other pay-up options more than him. The pay-up options, once again, that I'm getting to be a little bit different from the field. It's going to be Joel Embiid and Karl-Anthony Towns.
Yeah, Towns is where am I on Towns? He is someone I like, but he may have fallen out of the mix. It looks like he has fallen out, so I will have to go see why that happened. Back to shooting guard, or pardon me, back to small forward there. We mentioned Wagner. For me, Zach is okay. Small forward, Brandon Boston, Jalen Tyson. Pardon me, shooting guard, Brandon Boston, Jalen Tyson are the two I like.
Yeah, Brandon Boston, I am going to be overweight to the field too on him. And I know that he's somebody also who the field likes a good amount, but I like the correlation that I'm getting with some of the Cavs pieces on the other side. And then you just try to look at the Pelicans, and unless you're getting some game from Elfrid Payton from 7 years ago, I just have to imagine that Brandon Boston is going to be really, really responsible for a lot of the playmaking for them. Let's also get to a bunch of other questions that came in from Discord. Whoopity Whoop says Sims are giving him 90% of Craig Porter Jr. Does that make sense? He's still a really good option. He's just not as strong as he was when we thought he was going to be starting.
Yeah, and make sure you've refreshed so you're getting the other stuff in. If you're running
That's
it
true.
unencumbered, he should be around 70 to 80%, depending on what else you've tweaked.
This is
I'm
true.
gonna download my lineups here. Let's see our.
And then some other questions here. We have one from Joey. It says, for FanDuel cash, thoughts on Laravia, Jeremiah Robinson Earl, and Torrey Craig? I would not be playing those guys in cash. Well, Jeremiah Robinson Earl is acceptable for cash. I wouldn't play Jake Laravia in a cash game, though. Torrey Craig would only be if absolutely needed to play him in cash. And Sotek says if he's only playing one lineup on DraftKings, would Tyson be in it? No, I would not play Jalen Tyson if I was playing just one lineup. And then Stokes says best overall pay-up option tonight on DraftKings. It just best. If we're just talking about most fantasy points, it's Giannis. Zach Attack wants to know Craig or Kevin Porter Jr. Between the two of them, I prefer. Well, I don't know which Craig you're asking about.
I'm assuming Craig Porter Jr. and Kevin Porter Jr. is to ask.
Yeah.
It would be Craig.
If you're asking about Torrey Craig, then Kevin Porter Jr. If it's Craig Porter Jr., then I prefer Craig Porter Jr. to Kevin Porter Jr. And then Johnny wants to know, is campaign in play with McBride out? No. Way too many good value options to be playing him today.
All right, 2 minutes to go. For those of you that have not uploaded your lineups, make sure that you do so. Don't forget, we are going to be on playback here as we continue on. Let's see if there's any other stuff that popped up here. Fistula Poop, interesting name. Thank you for tagging me. Josh Plays tagged me so I wouldn't feel left out. I appreciate all of that. We'll go back here to YouTube. Got it filtered on. Who benefits from Norman Powell being out? We're not entirely sure. Harden technically will take more shots, but he's got one less person to pass to here. Some combination of Amir Coffey, Kevin Porter Jr., and some other wing. Terrence Mann will probably get more minutes. They're still going into the buzzsaw defense. That is the Orlando Magic, making it a little tougher to go. Feels more like a short game slate or a late night slate. That 3-game 10 o'clock slate would be where you'd really start looking at the Clippers outside of Harden and maybe Zubac. All right.
And yeah, I mean, people have been asking about him. So it is still a spot where I think that we should expect that Kevin Porter Jr. benefits. It just doesn't make him a better value play than some of the other guys, but he definitely does benefit from it.
Look at this real quick since we have one hot minute before we do the crossover. So Kevin Porter, it's not Kevin Pritchard, Porter Jr., not to be confused with Kevin Porter. So this his last 5 games, he's played 14, 6, 25, 27, and 16 minutes. So even though we're looking at just one player difference here, you can probably still pencil him in for upper 20s minutes tonight, but you can see that he's not necessarily endearing himself to the coaches. During this time, his field goal attempts have gone 6, 1, 10, 9, 9. Pencil him in for 10 to 12 tonight. I think that's okay. And then you're hoping he gets steals, but he hasn't really done that this year. And then assists is his other part of the game, but he is more of a score first guy. So it's hard to think of him for more than like 4 or 5 assists, even in a shorthanded situation like this.
Isaiah Hartenstein has been ruled in. So know that he's going to be playing today. News that we're still waiting on, and I'm about to be joining other Eric, over on playback in a second here. But some big news for later. Jalen Johnson is still questionable. And we also have Yusuf Nurkic questionable. So that is news that may or may not break while I'm with Eric over on playback. So everybody, if you haven't done it, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you want to bring us out, EMac, you certainly can. And come join us in playback. Jordan's going to spam that link in chat, and you can join Eric and myself over there.
Yeah, let's have some fun. I'm going to stick around for a little bit here on playback. So I'll come out and come back in so my camera works. And we'll hang out because I got to pick the brain of these two brilliant guys who are doing sports wagering kind of for a living. And if they weren't doing this as content, I bet they'd still be doing sports wagering kind of as a living. But with that, you can follow Greg out there on Twitter at Ehrenberg DFS. You can find me at EMac DFS. And of course, it is Stokastic _COM. With that, Big ups to producer Jordan, the Zinfluencer in everybody's life. Good luck.
By the way,
gamers.
I don't know if you came up with influencer, but that is absolutely hilarious. See you guys in playback.